not supposed to be for people over 65, but there are ways you can contribute anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we got a Black Lives. I was just saying to the guys earlier, we got a Black Lives Matter demo in Bath tomorrow. And being a documentary photographer and being in for 3 months, I was itching to go out and video it. But at the same time, knowing that I got underlying heart conditions, I'm just not going to take the risk because the virus is actually up in my area here at the moment. So it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But it's a nightmare, because being a creative, being a photographer, and wanting to help out and photograph these kind of things, I'm itching to get it out there, and you just can't.
Absolutely,
it's not worth the risk.
They made it to my small town. They're collecting over here tonight. They've been shutting down the highways pretty regularly, and I live in nowhere land, so it's spread pretty far and wide at this point.
Yeah. They had a big one in London yesterday and Wednesday. They had one just down the road from me in a place called Bristol yesterday as well. That was a big one as well, and we got one local tomorrow. So yeah, it's definitely spreading. And it's about time. But I just hope that we'll see some changes at last. We haven't in the past. Okay, so we got about 20 people in tonight so far, and I've got no agenda at the moment. So if anyone wants to type any questions or ask any questions, you can type the questions in the chat window, or you can ask questions or share anything you want with the rest of the people here. I'll keep admitting the people as they ping.
Well, I'm running errands the first half hour, so I'll check in with you.
Yeah, we'll see how long we last tonight. It's usually between 2 and 3.5 hours so far. I think 3 hours 20 minutes was the longest one. Okay, someone asked how to do remote influencing. We get asked that a lot at the moment, especially on the Facebook page. It's a hard one because I've never really practiced it myself, other than when you try to do heating on yourself when you're feeling ill. And the only studies I've ever read are studies on prayer and meditation, which is like a form of remote healing. I know there are documents in the Stargate archives on remote influencing, but they don't call it remote influencing. So people should, outside of the Stargate unit, people should really change their thoughts of it. They used to call it remote action. And there is a whole book on it as part of the great Stargate series that Ed May and his colleagues recently put out. I think it's book 3. I think is the psychokinesis book, and that has all their all the Stargate papers on what they did on remote influencing or remote action. It's not that it's quite scientific stuff though. So it's lots of macro PK type experimentation and stuff really. But I don't know an awful lot about remote influence, and I've never really tried other than one experiment when I tried to influence a random number generator during an RV session, and that was about 380 miles away from me up north in Scotland, which went quite well. But that's the only time I've tried it myself. So if anyone else has done any remote influencing, you could have a contribute or something, but I'm not a practitioner of it myself at this stage.
Could you say, Daz, more about Volume 3? I haven't read that on PK, the Stargate Archives Volume 3, just what's in there, because I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, most of it's like lots of papers on like random number generator studies. To be honest, John, I skipped through that one myself. I didn't read that one as diligently as I have the others because it's not really my main interest. But yeah, from what I saw, it was macro, mainly all the papers and experiments they did with macro PK and random number generators. I think they may have they talked about some of the magnetometer experiments, because they did the Ingo Swann one, and then they did a repeat of the Ingo Swann magnetometer, but they also did it with Ingo, and I think it was Uri Geller as well. Mm-hmm. So they had a second set of results on that. I think that might be in there as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not really my interest. So I think I kind of glance through that one more than making notes of the other 3 volumes.
I was interested in it particularly because Ed May had said they spent a whole volume on PK, and yet they didn't find, he claims, any reliable evidence of PK, but we've seen plenty of other evidence from Stephen Browdy and others who've done research about it. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder at times if the attitude that the science team goes in with in the beginning influences the results that they end up reporting. I don't know, but yeah, it literally is just the hardcore science papers, and I skipped through most of them. I think there might be some of Ingo's temperature experiments in there as well, because he did the early temperature experiments when things were in tubes and he tried to affect the temperature. I believe they're in there as well, and they interest me. I mean, only because anything Ingo did in the early days kind of interests me. And I think there's some stuff in there as well where Ingo did where he tried to affect microorganisms as well. So I can't remember what microorganisms it was, but I think it was like blood or semen or something like that, if I remember vaguely.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
Cleve Baxter's work, of course, they're trying to affect plants, but
yeah. And to be honest, the plant stuff interests me. The fact that the plants have the consciousness to be able to understand when you're lying to them as well. When you get past the stage of actually gone in to hurt them and you're just faking it, they know you're faking it. I find that really intriguing. Yeah.
All right.
Yale, what is the specific of your question on remote influencing?
It's in the chat window. It just says how to do remote influencing.
In a unfortunately now scrubbed from the internet video archives, I guess it was due to a music claim by MGM against Art Bell, probably the very best interview I've ever liked of Ingo. He admits in that interview that he used remote influencing only 3 times, and that was to affect some people, as he put it, that were doing something they ought not be doing. The training that Ingo got in remote influencing was prior to SRI. I've had the same training. So I guess if you were more specific about your question, I could possibly offer an opinion.
She adds to it at the bottom there, Yael. There are researches about that. Is remote viewing like praying, that you'll find a vaccine more quickly?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that I don't know how applicable that would be to specifically remote influencing, and even more specifically remote influencing other people. So maybe I don't know what to say to your question. Remote influencing people is something I've had the same training in that Ingo did. That I could say a little bit about, but if it doesn't answer your question, I don't want to waste your time.
Russell, are you talking about some type of Scientology training on remote influencing that Ingo had?
Correct. And again, whenever Scientology comes up, I want to make sure that people understand everything that Scientology covered was covered thousands of years ago. Patanjali would probably be the best and closest example that most of us would be familiar with. Scientology actually infamatized things more than they created things. So, but yes, that was the modality that he learned it in.
On this thing about praying, there have been studies, I think Russell Targ's daughter was involved, and others with studies about healing, remote healing by people who are experienced meditators and others, and several of those studies have found a distinct effect. So that is certainly a form of remote influencing.
Yeah, they're covered quite extensively in the book. What is it? Is it called The Field by Lynn Taggart? Is it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she has all the details of the Targ's daughter's experiments and other prayer and meditation experiments that have been done, you know, under proper blind conditions where people have been prayed for and other people haven't been prayed for, and the ones that have been prayed for have significantly improved results in healing from major diseases like cancer and stuff.
John, have you ever read any of William Tiller's work?
That's another difficult one. Yeah, I did get one of his volumes and skimmed through it. By the way, someone's posting they want to hear more from you, Russell, about that.
About
the earlier topic, I guess, about Scientology and stuff.
Oh, okay, sure. But if you can get past William Tiller's mathematical formulations that make no sense to me at all, and just, I mean, I read the paragraphs and forego the technical stuff, but he's done some of the very best work in this field of intention and remote influencing, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here, let me try to open the chat. What was the more specific question?
They just want to know a bit more about, you know, the Scientology part of things, I guess.
So to really understand remote influencing, all we have to do is look at a television commercial. You've got somebody remotely from you with an intention to produce a behavior in you that's broadcast invisibly through radio, television waves, microwave, whatever. And then you watch the commercial, and then it has some effect on you no matter what you do. Either you just say no and block it out, or it could have a subliminal effect. In other words, they show you a picture of a horrible disease and suddenly you want to go out and buy the cure for it. Specifically, I'm thinking of the commercial that advertises the vaccine for shingles. They just horrify you with blisters and then go buy this. So remote influencing is happening all of the time, every time. Some of the case histories that I've worked with discovered that when somebody was really ruminating on another person, even innocently, they didn't intend a remote effect, but they're just fuming about somebody telepathically, and in the interconnectedness or the entanglement of our minds, that in itself has been proven to have an effect. Voodoo is another effect. Specifically in Scientology, the training in that really starts in what they call OT3, which, again, none of those secret levels are actually secret. Those were marketing things. The only validity to those secret levels was there is a reasonable gradient built into them, where if someone walked in the door and went to, for instance, OT7, where Ingo was, that would be a little bit beyond their reality spectrum. So the intermediate steps serve some purpose, just the same way that when you learn remote viewing, you learn stage 1, then stage 2, then, you know, you just, if suddenly you set someone down and said, do stage 6, they'd be like, what is that? So it's always built. Monasteries did this for centuries, where someone walk in the door and then they gradually move them into different layers of meditation. So the practice itself, when you train on it, is to place your attention on the individual. And the first thing that should be heavily emphasized is ethics. What is your intent? Why are you wanting to influence anybody directly or remotely? So what you do is you tune in, and Ingo used a biofeedback meter, pretty similar to this one. This has been advanced and evolved well beyond what was used in Scientology. But what most people don't know is that Carl Jung was using galvanic skin response as biofeedback in 1905. So again, Scientology doesn't get credit for the device. Carl Jung does, in terms of its application to the spiritual realm. So once you make this contact, there are indicators on the meter that you have the situation. So in one of the situations I was trained in, similar to how Ingo was, it was to tune into something that was being done that was not beneficial to humankind. It was a malicious phenomena that involved technology. So when I tuned into the overall situation, strange, and this, remember, this is not RV, okay? This is a different modality. When I tuned into the situation, I got this incredible visual of the, I guess you would say, the operator's panel of this individual's task within this malicious technological manipulation. And I was shocked. I mean, when I started literally perceiving the background of this individual's thoughts, so that my instructor, who had over 40 years experience with this type of thing, started just giving me tips as to what to say and how to do it in an ethical way. And it wasn't till, you know, I have the transcript of the dialogue between me and this person, and it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 minutes into it that I realized this person thought I was their conscience. And they were actually, in their mind, dialoguing with themselves. So the way it was put was very gentle, emphasis on gentle questions. How do you feel about what you're doing? And in that process, the person came to a moment where they actually started crying, where they literally didn't feel good about what they were doing. The ethics are, you don't try to control or change, you present questions so that they can decide for themselves what benefit a change might bring to their life or to the world. So I can only tell you that the visuals were strong, the emotional content was very, very strong, and in the end, I had a powerful empathy for them, but they never had the sense that it was another communicating with them. They literally perceived it as their own internal dialogue. So then at a certain point, my instructor said, just, okay, now gently back out and let it be. Let it become their process, not yours. So in other episodes of doing this, I don't see any reason to be messing with remote influencing. I could see the curiosity, I could see the urge for proof. My instructor, in a very hilarious way, told me the first time he had had success with PK. So he had hung a pendulum in the corner of his house. He sat there for 19 hours and finally got the thing swinging a couple feet in an arc. And he said, as soon as it started happening, the first question he said, what am I ever going to do with this? I can make a pendulum swing in the corner of a room, but is it going to benefit humanity? Is it going to, you know? So I don't, at that point, I've just said, I have no interest in making anything move or whatever. So that field I've not involved myself in. But the remote influencing, my first question is, why do you want to do it? 2, what are the ethics involved? And 3, if you create an effect that's unintended, are you willing to be linked to that series of cause and effects as a kickback on yourself? Because it is going to happen, I promise you. You don't get to do it without being responsible for what it is you've done. So if you move somebody to a course of action that ends up having a horrific outcome, you better be prepared at one level or another to experience that. So I'm not a fan of remote influencing. I can't think of any circumstance that I would use it in currently. So hopefully that helped.
Russell, were you ever able to get any feedback on that experiment as far as the behavioral change you were trying to affect?
Not 1 ounce of feedback. That's another issue with it, is there's no way to quantify it. So, I mean, effectively, you could say that's purely your imagination, and I would have to say certainly that's possible. From the experience, the registration on the meter, my instructor's experience, I would say it was real, but there's 0 evidence and 0 feedback to substantiate it at all.
Russell, how important do you think the meter itself was? And was it just working almost kind of like a voodoo doll where you form the connection through the person, or do you think that there's something about the meter itself? And then my other question is, maybe if someone's really delusional, this could work on them, like if nothing else has helped and they have like a false belief, like if they think, you know, they're president of a country or something and they're not, or some kind of obsession, maybe this could help them with.
Well, the meter itself, when Carl Jung first started using it, it was when he was exploring the collective unconscious, pre-conscious, whatever you want to call it. And what he found was when you were putting something there with your imagination, the charge on the meter would indicate the effort you were putting that, whatever it is, there with. But when you place your attention on something that was actually there and radiating energy towards you, it indicates, and I can say this, I mean, I'm almost with 10,000 hours of working with people with it. And many of them, when I see a phenomenon on the meter, I'll wait a little bit, see if they volunteer data. Then I'll say, well, did anything come to mind? And they'll be like, how did you know? Yeah, I was just like, and then this goes back to the same thing as remote viewing. Don't internally self-edit, just literally put it out there. And if it's crazy, we'll figure out it's crazy. And if it's valid, we'll figure out it's valid. So the galvanic skin response now is sweeping across traditional counseling methods. The most interesting one that I've seen is couples counseling, where when you're in a certain state, you'll get a red light, and when you're in another state, you'll get a green light, and you're not allowed to speak until you have a green light. So that biofeedback trains the person to calm their mind to then be able to speak. In terms of your question, and remember, galvanic skin response was it's basically a Wheatstone bridge. So it's the fundament of lie detection. And yes, even with this meter, if someone is absolutely 100% convinced, and thus, you know, quote unquote delusional, the meter will respond to their reality. In other words, like the way they train intelligence agents to, like say you're going undercover in a biker gang, and the biker gangs are using these meters now, are using lie detection now. That agent has to really, really, really deeply self-convince themselves that what they're saying is true. Otherwise, the meter will detect it. So it's exactly the same as delusion. The meter will respond to that person's beliefs, but I mean, those beliefs have to be deep. It's not just a superficial, I think it's this way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and then do you think your influencing example could then work to convince them out of their delusion by talking to their subconscious?
No, because if you can't scream at a crazy person and get them to stop doing, and working on the streets of Seattle, we had to deal with all the mental illness cases. You know, it didn't matter what you did, you were not breaking through that world. And to think that that much of an overt, forceful, stop being crazy doesn't work. A little subtle whisper in the background of their mind isn't going to touch it either.
Anyone got any more questions on Scientology or remote influencing for Russell?
Do you know where we could get one of those meters you've got there?
Yeah, this one in particular, I'll put the link in the chat. There's only one place you can get it, and that's a gentleman out of England who's been working on this just for clearing for, I think since 1995 maybe. They're about $700 for the physical version that I have. He's a great guy. His name's Nick Ford. He stands 100% behind his product. So I'll look up that link and put it in the chat right now, okay?
How about a cheaper version? Is there a cheaper version of a meter like that you would recommend?
I was trained on this one, so I'm fond of it by virtue of that. I did buy another kind to explore the idea of doing it online, but that one was still $400, and that did not have the same effectiveness as this one. There was a processing delay on some of the reads, and some of the reads can be fairly subtle. So I am not familiar with the cheaper one, nor have I had any experience at all with the cheaper one, except for the computer interface one. Let me get that link there in the.
I have another follow-up question to the Scientology thing, Russell, whenever you're free.
Oh, sure, go ahead. I'll just make a note.
I was catching up today on a Facebook thread that you were taking part in, Russell. It was in response to the article that Daz had written recently on his website.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out to me is, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like you're under the impression that the later stages that Daz was saying that Ingo had been developing after SRI, I believe they were derived from Scientology protocols, for lack of a better word, that he was trying to apply to developing remote viewing stages that could be trained, shared with other people. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and again, I want to back up. First of all, those stages pre-existed anyway. Ingo was adamant. Where's that? Okay. Ingo was adamant in several documents, and one in particular Daz is familiar with, about trying to find, he wasn't trying to just say, do this, do this, do that. He was trying to find the natural flow of perception. Tom McNear doubles down on that in his working document. We're trying to find the natural extension of how perception works. So perception is prior to anything, prior to any interpretation. Then ancient yogis were working on this. Patanjali, verbalized it probably for the first time. So these stages, so when you look at the cities, some people say there's 16, some people say there's 25, doesn't matter. It's a progression. It's a progression of, traveling clairvoyance, for instance, which we would call remote viewing, up to, being able to become invisible. I mean, they're impressive when you read them. But Patanjali also said, don't get caught in any of these things, because the highest city, SIDDHI, is love. So these spontaneous awarenesses or abilities that come up on that journey towards, I guess what Russell Targ would call undifferentiated awareness, that's all natural. That's all happening prior to anybody's description of it. So these levels, per se, are only attempts to describe how perception works by itself. So knowing, okay, so I was also trained to the OT7 level. Mine was done outside of the church with the very people that Ingo trained with. In fact, today I got a surprise message from an 84-year-old ex-Scientologist that met Ingo and hung out with him at some advanced level training. So I grilled him as much as he was willing to talk about. So when you talk about these levels, we're only talking about perception. The brand Scientology, it just, I wish it didn't exist, okay? But it does. So getting trained to the same levels that Ingo was trained in, yes, what he's explaining there are these perceptual levels that we could call cities rather than OT whatever. And so that is my opinion, yes. But it's just, I mean, if we could just take the brand name off it, it would help so much. But you can't. It's just there. And also to remember there were multiple Scientologists involved in the inception of remote viewing. Two of them, Ingo got interested in it. One of those being Ed May, who for the first time expressed that he had. There's another one I won't out because they've never spoke of it publicly. Harold Putoff's relationship to it and Pat Price's relationship to it are public knowledge. Hal was an OT7, just as Ingo, and then Pat Price was an OT5. So they all had input into the creation of remote viewing, not just Ingo.
So I think what I'm getting at, Russell, or what my curiosity is what do you think, taking the label off of it, whatever these levels or protocols or concepts that Ingo might have been trying to integrate into some new remote viewing levels, do you think, because you seem to be well versed in, you know, with your background as an OT7 and that kind of thing, do you think there is, it would be useful to explore that, the whatever he was onto as a way to continue to develop remote viewing now? I mean,
Right.
It sounds like Ingo may or may not have been trying to integrate some of those things that you're talking about from Scientology or whatever we want to call it. Do you think there's fruitful ground to explore to advance remote viewing with those same ancient teachings now? Like a practical way to explore it and apply it?
Yeah, and for clarification, I was never certified by the organization as an OT7. What I did was I found those people who had defected from the church all about 1982, the same time Ingo left. I went to, as far as Germany, other places, to go with these people. So I was trained to the equivalent of no certification, no, you know, nothing I can say, yes, I am this. It was an equivalence, but it was the same training because I found the same people who delivered it back in the day. The biggest problem with this is the radical leap into what that group was in 1966 to what it's become today. It, you know, it's hard to even find an analogy for it, but the dissociation or the wish to dissociate from it is very purposeful. It's not the same as it was. If you wanted to experiment with those levels, literally in Yoga Sutras, in his when was the first Urva conference? That was 2001 or 2?
I thought it was 2001.
I think so. There's
20
one
years ago.
you can
Exactly
only get.
20 years ago.
Okay, you can only get this video off of Amazon. It's a 2 DVD thing of that conference. And Ingo talked about the books that were important to him, The User Illusion, a book, I can't remember the name of it, on mental image pictures, a couple of books on pre-conscious processing, but...
Was it Memory Castles or something?
No, I got the book and I was disappointed with it. And it was like a $150 book, and then I sold it back on Amazon. I can't remember. It just had something to do with how to work with mental image pictures.
Maybe Arnheim's book.
Do you remember the name of it?
Arnheim? Maybe not, but that doesn't matter too much, okay?
Yeah, no, I can't remember that one. But Patanjali elaborated it better than anywhere else. So Ingo had held up a book, the Yoga Sutras, but he liked a particular interpretation, and I can't pronounce the guy's name. I could put a link to that also if people are interested. But there's no reason to subject oneself to an organization for any of it. None. Now, is it useful to have somebody that's already kind of been through it? I have to be honest and say yes. So my job when I work with people, I'm called a session guide. I'm not it's that person, it's my session partner, it's their session. They're the boss. They're the only therapist in the room. It's just if particular phenomena, unusual phenomena, things they're not comfortable with come up, I can help them with it because I've experienced it. So there's a fine line, but there's plenty of people who spontaneously or naturally awakened, or maybe they just came to Earth without all of that junk hanging over them in the first place, that are out there that can work with people. So I think the ideas, not only do I think they should be pursued, I think we don't have a choice. I think we're all going to go through whatever clarification of our own perception, the waking up, whatever it is, whether we like it or not. So I think it's just more a matter of when rather than if. So you, in coordination with life or your relationship to the big picture, somehow you'll work that out for yourself, no matter what.
That video of Ingo at the IRVA concert or conference, is that only available on their site? Does anyone know, or is it?
No, that one's not on the IRVA site. The only place I have found it is on Amazon. So I'll put a
2001.
You know what, I can't recall exactly. It definitely wasn't 2002. So it was whatever IRVA conference preceded 2002. But I'll put a link to the Amazon DVD, because Ingo really, I mean, in that one he was spry. He said some interesting things. One part I remember very distinctly was he goes, "Oh, my ear is ringing. I'm under psychic attack." I didn't know what that meant then, but at a certain point, I've come to know what he meant. So right in the middle of his talk, he acknowledges his ear ringing and says, "I'm under psychic attack." So it's really interesting. It's very relaxed. It's the best way I can qualify it, where one of Paul's very close associates had passed away. And in the ceremonies of the conference, Paul did a very nice memorial, or read something to acknowledge this young woman. Do you know which one that was, Daz?
Sorry, I to be honest, I was looking through my video archive here to see if I could find that video.
Yeah, I'll do the same. I'll pop over real quick, see if I can actually find it, show you the cover, but I will put the link to it in the comments, along with the link to Patanjali and where to get the meter. So excuse me for a minute.
I haven't got all the IRVA stuff, but I got some of the videos. I got a vast library of remote viewing videos here, so I'm just trying to look for it so I can find it.
So I can just share kind of in terms of Darby's question. So I had spent a few years studying Ingo's archives and looking for exactly what you were asking. Was there any techniques from Scientology that he really used in his remote viewing work or the development? And I would say I don't really think there was expressly a technique. It was more that he was very used to monitoring his own thoughts and emotions moment to moment, which is Russell's been talking about with the use of the e-meter, so I don't know that he ever used that in his sessions, but he was very used to paying attention and then how he responded and then getting control of it, which I think is then what led him to the idea of the importance of taking breaks in a session when, even starting to feel the least, just a tiny bit of emotion. For him, it was, get out of that. Don't get stuck in that. And so I think that was the most important thing. In studying the origins of how he learned what he did, it seems so much like it was more influenced by the thousands and thousands of experimental trials he went through, starting off with the American Society of Psychical Research. So his work with Janet Mitchell, which she really outlines very well. Janet Mitchell and it's titled something about out of body. Something about out of the body, Janet Mitchell. I think it's like 90 she published it in 91, but it really outlines Ingo's first attempts at really intentionally doing psychic work and how it developed and his realizations. And then, of course, a lot of you are have access to his online archives, and he talks about that as well. So it's really, when you put what he put out there, the book that Janet Mitchell wrote, and his own archives, you see really the progression of him learning and making discoveries. And so much of it was just having those opportunities to be trying out different things all the time in a supportive environment that was designed for that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, guys.
Right. And Deborah, too, you just said exactly what Ed May said. When Ed May was commenting on Ingo, he said he has an exceptional awareness of his own inner experience. And that was a key. So when I say this about the influence, there really are only two stages of CRV 1 through 6 that Ingo took something from there in. Ideogram was not one of those. That was already being experimented with, I think, in the 1880s. Stage 2, though, the tactiles, that comes right out of the Scientology technical dictionary. Stage 3, sketching, Ingo initiated when he was at ASPR, and he was all tied down by everything, where he started sketching. And so in his online autobiography, he credits the emergence of sketching as part of it as that. Stage 4 is not Scientology at all. Stage 5 is not Scientology. Stage 6 is. Ingo did, I don't know how many hours of clay modeling he must have had to do to pass all of his tests. That was an integral part. So only stage 2 and stage 6, the other ones were co-created, discovered, supported by Hal and the others. So that's it for that. But the key part was exactly what he said, and Ed May acknowledged it. He knew his own inner signal, and that may be because the meter, it has a Pavlovian effect. So in other words, if I see it go like this, and my right cheek twitches, for instance, I start to learn the feeling of my right cheek twitching. And then once I get away from the meter, I just know that feeling. So when it comes to an inner thing, sometimes you'll feel something, like your head will get foggy. You look at the meter will indicate it. Then you get rid of the meter. Next time your head gets foggy, you know what to do. So in a certain way, it's training wheels more than any sort of a central device. When you're working with someone else in a session, they're number one. What they say goes, period. Then secondarily, with your experience as a session guide, your observation is meaningful, but you keep it to yourself because you're not imposing your crap on them. And then tertiary is the meter. Just kind of, you look at it out of the side of the eye, and if what they're saying, what you know, and that all lines up, that's kind of an area you might want to say, hey, let's explore this a little bit. So the meter is not a dictator by any means. So here's that video. It's a 2 DVD set. I'll put the link to it. Amazon usually seems to have only one copy at a time. So I bought 2 or 3, and every time I do, it's replaced. So I'll put the link, but this is it. And yeah, I mean, when you read it, to me, it's one of my favorite Ingo talks ever.
Russell, when you mentioned a second ago with like holding the meter and then, kind of like getting a jolt to your cheek and being able to connect the dots on your own, are there any alternatives to connect the dots without the meter?
Oh yeah, I know, in fact, one person way back from the day, one of the people I approached to get the equivalent of Ingo's training doesn't use a meter at all. They did for many years, but now they literally can just, I mean, when I was working with them, this person I had to work with online, they were not available in person. So I don't know how many hours with this person. Their focus on me, even through the computer screen, I could literally feel it. I mean, their face is bright and clear, their eyes are bright and clear. And I would be like, they'd ask a question and maybe I'd hesitate a little, because sometimes, you know, in that process, you got to put some things out there you prefer not to. And then he would just kind of look and smile and go, "Are you sure?" And I'd be like, "Oh, okay, fine. Here it is." Well, you know. So lots of people can do it with intuition. Really, at a certain point, you want to get away from meter dependence. The only reason I use it with my session partners is because it expedites things for them. They have to suffer less, so to speak. So when, you know, after a lot of solo work, doing sessions on myself, I can do it on the fly now without a meter, but I don't subject others to that.
Gotcha. And then I feel like, you know, it's kind of asked a million times, but do you have any thoughts, opinions, suggestions on physical and non-physical ways to guard yourself from remote influencing and other forms of, you know, psychic, you know?
I do.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Just forget it. What the universe in its totality, whether you want to describe it as an intelligent source or whatever, you have no secrets.
So it's sort of the subtle voice that you speak of, and being able to not differentiate between your conscious and subconscious. I mean, that really resonates with me. So it's like, It's not so much about worrying, it's about ending an active thing in my life.
The key to it is this. One, I mean, just disregard it. To me, the source of this universe, if it's intelligent, okay, knows every single thing, secret, whatever. So who cares if I get remote viewed? I don't care. Now,
well, I don't want to be influenced.
Right,
I don't want my subconscious to tell me one thing when it's not me. And I've had doubts with my subconscious before, especially with, you know, my issues, if you will, with ghosts and
sure,
you know, voices and stuff. And so I understand what you mean by like, don't worry, but I'm still kind of worried.
Okay, so the next step is this: know your own voice. At a certain point, if you know your own voice, anything other than your own voice comes into your sphere, you recognize it instantly. So let's just say it's a benevolent deceased spirit that, you know, wants to help you, or, you know, any number of these strange phenomena. Just if you recognize a different signature than your own, then you just simply acknowledge it. Okay, you know, there's this thought and it appears to not be mine, and therefore, okay. Because we're being influenced. I mean, if you just drive down a normal strip through a town with some, you know, like strip malls and what are fast food places, every sign is influencing you. Every radio station, I mean, everybody's trying to influence us continuously. So it's going on relentlessly. And then sometimes, like for instance, you know, you're sitting in a casino and you want the dealer to flip an ace or whatever. You're wishing that they, you know, so we're all doing it to each other. It's happening all the time. But if you know your own voice, you just, you know, you just let it all ping off. It truly, any concern or any worry that becomes obsessive about, oh my God, I hope nobody influences me. Trust me, it's just.
Well, it's less of a concern and worry and just overwhelming.
I understand.
You know, and do you have any tips on ways to know my own voice?
Yes, just sit still and would do, you know, and people call it meditation, whatever. Just sit still, let the monkey mind chatter away, observe it, don't try to interfere, don't try to stop, just there. And at some point in that process, you're gonna you're going to just feel who you are, and everything else will become clear, because it's going to be, you're going to be able to differentiate it from that who-ness. So I mean, sitting still would be the cure that I would suggest.
Yeah, that I do that, but not enough. Yeah.
Right. None of us do. I mean, we talk about it, but so I just, the caution, you know, it just, if made a big deal, at some point, our imaginations will put some stuff there, and then we'll be interacting with ourselves and not anything objective. Let me check in with Daz for a minute. Daz, you're muted.
Yep.
We had, you know, at one point, people had said, hey, let's talk a little bit about the Scientology stuff. It seems like it's happening spontaneously. Are you wanting to change topics, go to something else? Because I don't want to.
Whatever people want to talk about.
Okay. So is there anything else that anybody had? And then maybe we can go to another topic. Okay. I will consider that the end of this, and I appreciate the interest, and I do enjoy talking about it, but it can become too consumptive and distractive of a topic. And I myself, I really wish remote viewing had never been associated with it. It's just that we have to acknowledge history as history unfolded. So there you go. Thank you.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because it's Scientology over the last decade or so has become quite controversial.
I'd like to add something real quick, if I could, to the concern about influencing. You know, it's very easily, it happens very easy. And right now the country, you know, if you're in the US, is kind of divided. It's not in the best of shape. And it's very easy when you're watching television, and Russell, you hit the nail on the head. Advertisers, Wall Street, you know, they all are trying to get a piece of your mind and trying to move you. I think it's very important to disconnect and, you know, quiet your mind and then assess the situation objectively. Find out if you're being pushed or pulled in one direction, and ask yourself, I mean, I think in our core, we know what's right and what's wrong. And we know, you know, are we being driven to have this soft drink or this fried food, or, you know, you always need to be captain of your ship, master of your soul, as the book says. I think it's important never to give up your control over your decisions and yourself.
I have a quick question. The coronavirus, could we have collaboratively, I mean, did the remote viewing community miss the boat on this? I mean, I've seen work by like Russell and Jeff in like open tasking type of, like a problem solving type of target. Could we have, you know, found some kind of solution to this virus through remote viewing, and how would you task something like that?
Well, could we have come up with a solution? I would say yes, if you could organize a group of proficient enough remote viewers to work it blindly with a good project manager, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Deborah, didn't you do the bacteriophage, which was similar? Have you ever seen that one, David?
I did see. What's interesting is I saw something that I saw Deborah had got some perceptions, and what I did notice about what she had written, I think she mentioned black licorice or something.
No,
and what's interesting is I saw that data come out of like some completely other source about that having some effect on corona.
No, what I'm referring to is an experiment or project that I think Deborah did with someone else involved. Lance, was it? No, not Lance.
Lance Bean.
You're muted, Deborah.
That was the we had won the War Collier Prize, the first one ever put out for that project, and we had 41 or 42 remote viewers looking at the kind of virus that attacks bacteria, so a phage. And a lot of interesting things came out of that. But I would say directly in response to this question is that it really, for this kind of thing, you have to be working with people who can actually then take the information and do something with it, like a virologist or immunologist. And so you've got to have someone already on board and who really understands remote viewing, and maybe even, I don't know, maybe they would just be trying to work out a very specific part of their research, and they're just, you know, there's a element or two missing that the remote viewers might be able to help with. So I think it could be very helpful, but the problem is if you don't start off with that to then just bring your information somewhere. I mean, not that it couldn't happen, but, you know, it's all got to really work together. And, you know, it's not that different than someone having insights into a crime and not being able to find the right law enforcement who are open to the idea, interested, and actually have the means to follow through on the information.
But as an example, the experiment you did with the bacteriophage is a similar example, isn't it? Where remote viewers were used to look at a very, you know, a virus, or what makes a virus, and they did get some good results on it. So it is possible.
Daz's session was terrific for that, in a lot of close matches. But yeah, the people that we had a hard time recruiting virologists, and then we did have 3, but even then they weren't actively involved in the research, because for that project we were looking for the trigger of replication, what causes these to reproduce, which actually would be quite analogous to like what's needed to be known now with the virus, what causes it to keep reproducing in other people. And so yeah, but there was nobody to actually take our information and put it into effect. And then there's always the problem too, and this is true of any remote viewing project, is you're generating information that's known and that's not known. So if you're having like we had the scientists judging how well the viewers did, so they could, but at the same time trying to make use of that information. And so they could say, yes, this is true of what we know, but if the whole purpose is to help them with what they don't know, but then they're judging some information as unknown or incorrect, it's very challenging.
Now, if you're a virologist or whatnot, and you're a remote viewer, and since, you know, under the idea that you're taking, you know, what you know into that, you know, session as a viewer, would you more likely be able to interpret that kind of a session? I mean,
yeah, that would be great. And just thinking of it, that's why it would be really great to, maybe right now the best thing we could do is try to train a bunch of virologists or immunologists or anyone involved. Like, that would be the thing to do. And isn't that what they did in the military? You know, they took guys that already knew what submarines look like and all sorts of things like that, where I wouldn't even know, you know, where to, you know, what to call most of that equipment. But, you know, there's something to say for that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I've always said the best team would be a team that had, you know, maybe a scientist on it, a medical person like a doctor or a nurse, an artist, an engineer, an architect, and a visionary. You know, you have a team of people that are good at and proficient at remote viewing, and you had all those skills, and you could pretty much cover any target in the universe. And one of those people would have life skills, because we all bring life skills to what we do within remote viewing, you see. And yeah, a team like that would be the perfect team for operational projects, I think.
Cover the whole spectrum.
Yeah, because it is all about what we've learned in life, you know. And I've known that from when I do targets. Like, every time someone chucks me a target, it ends up being the Great Pyramids, for example, because I've actually been to Great Pyramids and I've been inside, you know, I've been inside the Great Pyramid, meditating, all that kind of stuff. It just means that because I have those experiences, you know, I've touched it, I've breathed it. Actually doing that as a target, even though it's blind, I get better data on that than I do normal targets, because I have that internal life library of sensory data that just, you know, I can compare to the intuitive data that much easier. And so it's the same with choosing people's. Yeah, and as Deborah said, if you really wanted to find a way out of the virus, the COVID-19 virus with remote viewers, it'd be easier probably to teach virologists quickly how to do remote viewing sessions, because they know what they know what they're trying to describe. Like, I remember when we were doing the bacteriophage one for Deborah, I knew the object was a tiny microscopic thing, and I was drawing this kind of jelly shaped thing, but I'm not a virologist. I don't know what I'm drawing when I'm drawing these weird kind of shapes that fit together. Whereas a virologist would go, yeah, I know what this is, and they'd be able to put the pieces together that much better.
One thing that was interesting about the project that I almost forgot was, well, we took all of the viewers, and so there were 42 viewers, and they did 2 sessions each. We took all of their words, put it into a Word document, and then Alexis Poquiz, he did whatever he did and found the top repeating words of all of those. And because we thought, well, maybe there's some clues with the top repeating words. And I think the top word was heat. So there was something about heat and all of that. And we thought, well, maybe that's the key to everything. But again, that didn't really reach whoever is doing that research.
Okay, so anyone got any questions? Or are there any in the chat here, or anything people want to ask or share?
Hey, I got a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm still kind of a beginner, but I did a practice target yesterday, and I'll kind of describe it. It was just a photograph. I think it was one of Lori's practice ones. It was like the target was, it just said Ireland, and it kind of had like a little bit of dirt in the foreground, and then kind of a low level, probably like just a low level house in the midground. There's some sky in the background. So I got the ground and I got the sky, the cloudy sky, but then I started getting like this, which I kind of took it like an AOL, getting like this red kite or like a red square. And I thought like, oh, I was trying real hard not to name it and say, oh, it's a kite, a red kite in the sky. But I'm wondering, after I did it, I kind of thought maybe it wasn't something red, but it was kind of like, maybe my subconscious tell me that hey, there's one more thing. There's like that structure in there, which kind of was like obviously the main thing, even though it's pretty low. Everything was very earth tones. So anyone ever kind of get almost like it was being highlighted for me? Maybe I'm just kind of like imagining that, but is that anyone ever heard of that or come across that, where something, it's not really there, but it's more like kind of like the saying where it sticks out like a sore thumb, but there's no sore thumb actually there. It's just something sticking out like a sore thumb. Does that make sense?
Did you get your feedback photo?
I did, yeah, right after. It was just a real quick practice, but nothing was red. It was just like this kind of like earth tone structure, and somewhat cloudy sky, and then some brown dirt or sand in the foreground, but nothing red.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, like, seeing the session. I'd have to see what the clusters of information before and afterwards were possibly doing.
Okay. Yeah, it was a pretty scant session. Like I said, it was a real quick one I did just for the heck of it. I kept in this red nagging thing. I wrote down like red like or reddish or something like that. But I don't know. It seemed like maybe I was trying to highlight something. I was just happening to using red, but I was focusing on the color and not so much the importance of it being highlighted for myself.
Yeah, hard to tell, to be honest, without seeing the target and the session, and seeing the environment you were working in.
Okay.
Well, one thing I noticed in the chat when I went through it, so I had put up the Ingo Talk DVD, where to find the meter, and then Patanjali, or Ingo's Patanjali recommendation. While doing that, I saw there was pretty much 3 little unanswered questions about where I got the concept of the ideogram from the 1880s. So can I share screen for a second, Daz?
Yep.
Okay, can you guys see that? Is it visible?
Yep.
Okay, so read the bottom paragraph. I don't know. See, I didn't get. It doesn't say who did it or where they got it, but that's where the quote came from, a declassified document. So if that helps anybody track it down, I don't know who the 1880s.
It's definitely the work of Rene Worcollier.
Was he from the 1800s?
There was someone before him. I can't remember the name of it.
Okay. Anyways, I just wanted to verify that quote, but I can't answer your question as to who the source was.
Yeah, all the history. Rene Worcollier wrote the kind of like the seminal book on it, and I think he refers to previous work and stuff in his book as well.
Yeah, I remember that vaguely too. Okay, so everybody done with that? All right.
Well, and Paul Smith just wrote something about ideograms. Did you guys see that? And he wrote that Ingo had noticed that when he was first starting to work with students or other people, that they would just start to kind of doodle.
Yeah.
And he started to pay attention to what those doodles were and starting to think that they actually had meaning. So according to Paul, that's how Ingo came up with the idea.
Yeah.
Is that true or not? I don't know.
I did have a discussion with Ingo once, and I got the letter here as well, because I said to him, I said, Ingo, I just realised I've come to the conclusion that all you did with the military guys is you essentially taught them how to be creative and be artists. And I broke it down. I said, because the CRV process, if you break it down, it's just starts off with people doodling, then they move to sketching, and then they move to modeling the targets, and it's just art, isn't it? And he said, I got the letter from him. He says, well done. He says, yeah. He says, it's funny that the military guys allowed me to let this get it past them. That because they're hard-nosed military guys that don't like to do that kind of thing. And he admitted that it was just a fully creative process.
Is it an expression of a sort? Remote viewing a target. I mean, the kinesthetic. Am I saying that right? Feel of it. I mean, you're trying to express something ultimately, right, on the piece of paper at the end of the day.
And that extends now as well, because a lot of us are doing video work and whiteboard work as well. So it's almost like that's another extension of that kinesthetic process, because you're stood up, you're in front of a whiteboard, your feet are moving, your arms are moving, you're interacting with the board, you're rubbing it off, all that kind of stuff. And as you're doing that, that generates another new flow of information, just like the stage 6 modeling.
And that's exactly what you just said about the art, and what Ingo said to you. It's exactly what he's talking about. He was only looking for the natural flow, and then Tom McNear. So perception, expression, that's all it is. So perception is whatever it is. Expression is formatting the content of the perception. So I agree with that. Now, Deborah, one thing akin to what Paul said in that article, when I was training with Ed Dames, he gave us a talk on how they discovered the ideogram, and I cannot say whether this is true or not. I never verified it, but it's similar to what Paul. Ed said that when they were working with automatic writers, that they would be given, they would say to them target or whatever. And like if they were holding a pen, they kind of go like this and then start to write. So at some point, someone said, why don't you put your pen on the paper when you go like that? Again, I have no history or verification of it, but that's what Ed taught in the class that I took with him.
I'd like to comment on this. I mean, my impression was that actually Ingo got the idea of ideograms from Worcollier and other authors, and it came up on Facebook that someone said it's all spontaneous, it's not a language. But on the contrary, Swann talked about it as a picto language, which is what wore Collier, some of his drawings, and also Upton Sinclair's wife's drawings, showed a common thread of these things of structure, like a right angle would be a structure, stuff like that. That's where I think it came from, frankly, but I don't have the time to look it up right now or find it unless someone else has it. I just don't, so the idea that it's all spontaneous and natural, that there's not some sort of language or structure to it, I don't think that's what Ingo was saying. But he's certainly talking about your artistic side, bringing that out, expressing it, but there are certain forms he felt were common to many people who do this.
Okay, so we got any other questions here that are not looked at? I don't think so. Anyone else got anything they want to ask or discuss?
Hello, I'm Demi. I'm also Wana. I would like very much, because I'm a beginner also. I don't really understand me because my English is very bad, but I think I hope you will. I am wonder about I don't know, the first 2 years of remote viewing, if you remember, and what the big issues were then, and what bumps did you saw, and you and the other ones also. And another question for you, Daz. I understand you hear some music during the process, and I was wondering how you hear sound when you remote viewing, and having the plug in your ear with the, I don't know. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, the music one I can answer is really easy, because and this is, again, I can't prove this. This is just my theory or my belief, is that we don't go anywhere, so because I literally sit here and do my remote viewing where I am now, and I don't believe, if the target's Mars, I don't actually believe that any part of me in any way travels to Mars and gets information. I think that everything in the universe is entangled. So the information about Mars is already within me, and it's within these objects on my table. It's just everywhere around it because everything's interconnected. And the way I record information is I don't, when I'm doing my stage 2s in CRV, so it's like, what was the target feel like if you touch it, or what does it smell like? What does it taste like? What am I listening to? Any sounds? None of that for me is real. I do not have any physical sensations of any kind of what the texture is. I do not have any smell sensations or taste sensations. I literally just say to myself, what does this taste like? And the very first word that comes into my head as a feeling is what I write down. So it's just instant knowledge for me. I have no sensations. So I can quite easily listen to music, and I always listen to classical music. At the moment, primarily it's the theme track to Interstellar, because I just like the tone of it. So I don't. There's no conflict in hearing, the Interstellar soundtrack and then asking myself, what does the target sound like, or what sounds like, because I don't actually physically hear or any of those sounds. It's just words and feelings. But that, some people might find it different because we're all different when we do this.
It's yes, it's okay, because the perception for me is also in form of words or concepts or something like this, and I didn't know if I was on the right track or no. Thank you. Thank you, Dad.
Yeah, we're all different. I mean, there are some people out there that hear stuff, and in my previous life of doing psychic work before remote viewing, where I did, specifically did something called clairaudience, which is like hearing noises and people speaking to you, dead people, all that kind of stuff, and clairvoyance and mediumship and channeling, and sound reading, all that kind of stuff. In those practices, taught in a classical way, I probably maybe did think I heard stuff. But for me, the remote viewing process is a completely different offshoot. But everyone's different on this, and that's the intriguing thing about being intuitive and psychic. We all have our little differences.
Thank you.
Anyone else here or feel, taste, smell, actually things in when they're doing RV?
I don't see it
Yes.
as a word, but to me, it's almost like it's CRV. It's almost like a memory of a feeling. You know what I mean? That's not necessarily the feeling itself, but almost like, it's like a memory of it. It's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, and that's how it mainly feels to me. So what I'm doing when not so much when I go out for a walk with the wife because we're talking and stuff, but when I go out for walks on my own, doing photography and stuff, what I do is when I'm conscious of it, I will, as I'm walking along, run my hands across different textures and stuff. So if I'm passing a wall, I will run my fingers along the wall and say to myself, okay, I'm trying to build my internal library here of sensations for remote viewing. So what does, when I'm touching this wall, what does it feel like? And I did that for a number of years. I touched metal surfaces as I was walking along and pick up those kind of things to try to build this bigger kind of database of memories, because they're, in the early days of RV, they said that the bigger your database of memories, the more accurate your remote viewing would be.
Like a big library of everything in the sort of yes. Okay.
Yeah. The more memories and experiences you have of sensory stuff, I would say the easier and more accurate your data would be within remote viewing, because it would be easy then for your mind, because when data comes into your mind through this kind of hypothetical signal or whatever, so you get the data come in and then it has to be interpreted in some way for you to get it down on paper. It has to use whatever you have in your, essentially in your library of experiences or memories. And I think that's where we get AOLs, where, because AOLs generally aren't completely wrong. AOLs are generally just a little bit wrong. And I think that's because the information comes in, your minds are going, okay, I need to interpret this. And if you haven't experienced that exact thing in real life, I think the process then picks the next best thing from your memory bank and gives you that. And that's where I think we're getting the AOL from. It's the next best thing in your memory bank. So it's generally part right, but part wrong, but it's the closest you have in your internal Rolodex.
Oh, yes. And, okay, thank you. It's okay. For me, it's okay. Thank you.
Daz, I'd like to ask you, that was very interesting how you described how you get the impressions. How about emotions with people and stuff like that? Do you actually, someone's asked about merging. Yael asked about merging, which is more a TDS type thing. But aside from that, do you feel like that you're looking through the eyes of the person, or you're sensing them in some way, or you just get their emotions, again, sort of abstractly, is how I thought you described it.
Yeah, none of it's real for me, but it may be because that was the way I was taught to do the CRV thing. I was taught not exactly the Ingo way of doing things, but it's close to, especially back then in the 90s, in that it's not like the classical kind of psychic processes. I don't know if any of you guys have taken classical psychic training, but some of it's a little bit kind of airy fairy, and kind of like crystals for healing and protection and white light, all that kind of stuff. Whereas CRV and RV to me was always taught it's like you're sat there, you're just getting the impressions, you're not there, you're not going to the target. It's like very hard nosed and hardcore. So the emotions for me, I feel with people's emotions, but I don't actually, if you understand, I don't feel their emotions. I know what their emotions are. But I did on a couple occasions get close to building my own kind of, because you're building this picture as it comes in, almost like a virtual reality in your head. And a couple times when working a couple of the murder cases, especially when it was really young children, one of them been chucked in a rubbish dump, kind of thing. I think a couple of those, I started to get close to building a virtual reality of emotions that did kind of then bring on my emotions. But yeah, for me, it's just very small feelings and words. You know,
Yeah.
other than actually one target that Tunde gave me once, which was Jesus, and that target was just you know, it's on my website as a free download and stuff, and it was just like unconditional love everywhere, and I've never experienced that with anything else that I've ever seen in the amount of remote viewing, and I've done a lot of stuff out of remote viewing as well. So that would be the one and only overwhelming time.
And just for new people, I mean, there are viewers who get tremendous emotional hits from a target. Ingo himself said that he had to stop doing murder cases. It was just tearing him apart. And in transdimensional systems, my friend Don, who was on the public demonstration team, he was really good with emotions. He was a chiropractor. He could just sense them and get into them. Myself, I don't get emotions much, but I get drawings and other things. So people have different styles, clearly, but there's both the emotional and non-emotional ways to go about it.
I think it's as I said, life skills. What you've done in your life. Like I've always had an interest in the psychology of what serial killers and stuff do as well. So I've watched lots of documentaries and read hundreds of books on what serial killers do, and it has no, you know, I can read it and some of it's really grim, disgusting stuff, but it has no emotional kind of contact with me because it, you know, it's detached from me. It's not real. Whereas I can understand someone else would read it, like my wife, and she would be almost like physically sick. It would affect her that much.
Just an interesting fact here is that you probably have seen this, Daz. I'm not sure how many other people have. So Ingo did a study of the astrological signs of sort of like murderers. Yeah, basically crazy murderers. And he came up with certain signs in astronomy that are more prevalent to have them than not. Fortunately, one of them wasn't Capricorn, which is I can't remember. Anyway, that's in the archives too for those who are into astrology and Ingo's wide-ranging interests.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
I wanted to just back up for a second to what somebody said a minute ago. First of all, you know, when these conversations online get intense, I want to make sure everything's okay between you and I.
Absolutely, Russell, no problem.
All right, no, that's important. It's more important to me than the thing. But I will let you know something that is forthcoming. I've been helping Paul go through his archives of communications with Ingo, some recorded, obviously, with Ingo's permission, and some written. So he is going through that and some of it will clarify some things. The one thing I want to say, and just like everybody here, I love my instructor and I'm protective and I'm human, and so I'm 100% guilty of bias, no doubt. But I will say, having gone through some of this with Paul, he's been exceptionally gracious in things that he's refused to publish because it could potentially be harmful. And that's given me a deeper respect for him. So what he's doing right now is trying to find ways to do it and do it where, you know, it doesn't hurt people. You know, Ingo is very truthful in his conversations, and Paul's well aware of the fact that Ingo said some things not so favorable about Paul at various times of their disputes over the years. But there will be some more data coming out. And some of it I think will clarify some things. And so I just wanted to let you know that it's in process.
Yeah, fine.
That's cool. Do you know where it'll be coming out on, like in something Paul's writing, or is he gonna be putting it?
Yeah, no, he's gonna have all the links to the recordings, to whatever. Typically, he puts these types of things in his blog first, and then they migrate to the various Facebook pages. In response to one of Daz's questions asked today, he might put a direct link there later. I'm not sure how long this sorting out process is going to take, but I assume it would possibly be his blog first, and then somehow moved over to the to Facebook, Daz's, and then Alexis's.
Well, just to say, absolutely, Russell, I respect you and all your efforts, and glad that you brought all this insight about Scientology to the field, even though you don't like it, I don't like it in a way. But it's the history, it's the important history. So yeah.
No, and I just wanted you to know, I never don't think about your feelings or our prior communication. Same with Daz. I'll debate intensely, and when I get slapped down, I'll acknowledge it, I'll apologize where apologies are due, I'll correct my thinking system and move forward. It's just when I put it forth assertively, and sometimes, you know, you just don't know where that's going to land with other people. So I just want to make sure you know, I value friendship over correctness, if you will.
It's hard because
to say, go ahead.
I don't think any of us are trying to get personal or anything with any of this. I think we're just all coming from it from different perspectives, trying to piece together a very difficult history of remote viewing, because it's, you know, it is in a bit of, the history is in a bit of a mess. You know, it's not 100% accurately reported, and, you know, everyone brings their own viewpoints. Like, you know, me and Paul had massive arguments with Joe McMoneagle a couple of years ago, where Joe McMoneagle was adamant that remote viewing had literally never been trained past stage 3, and it had never been recorded trained past stage 3, and you know, there was no evidence that it actually training had actually worked at all. So when I presented loads of documents and Paul presented loads of documents, he was still stuck in his own mindset, you know, based on his memories of SRI and stuff, that what we were presenting wasn't true. So we're all approaching this from our different viewpoints, memories, and trying to piece together this intricate history.
I just want to say, but I was going to say, I have, you know, I'm still learning, guys, but I have dabbled in both methods. I have dabbled in the, you know, the spontaneous ideogram and the, you know, like the lexicon type. And what I found was, you know, I may spit out the correct, you know, what that target is, structure, water, whatever, you know, I may get that. But what I didn't get out of it in the lexicon approach was the feeling about that target in that instant. That I only got through the spontaneous ideogram. That's all I'm saying.
But, you know, this is what I keep saying to people. There is no, you know, CRV is fantastic. It's a genius tool. You know, Ingo was pure genius when he kind of put that together. I wouldn't, you know, and, you know, he did borrow lots of it from other places, you know, but he did put it together and dissect his own internal way of doing things to come out of it. But, you know, and we know this from a fact from there are many people that tried CRV and absolutely hate it. It does not work for them. You know, it's not the one and only solution out there. And, you know, even if you do use it as your main solution, you probably will find over time that, you know, little bits you will change personal to you as a person, because we're all individuals. Yeah, there is no one stop, you know, one solution that's going to fit every single person on the planet for doing this. You have to allow things to adapt and work with you and find the best solution for you as an individual.
Right, and, you know, when we were talking about the different ways people perceive emotion, different in the work I do, what simply astounds me when I work with clients, every single person's what I call mental theater is different. It operates differently and uniquely to each person. I've not seen two alike. So as one example, if somebody's working on something and it dissolves, which is the object of clearing, to look at something that maybe you have been resisting and then bring it in, look at it, finally just say, okay, yep. And as soon as you get to that level of what I call acceptance capacity, the thing dissolves. So I've had one person say, wow, it was like a sheet of water that just, one person described it like that thing decoupage, like it was a piece of paper that was burning from the edges and disappeared. Another person saw it as a little pile of sand that blew away. So in our mental theaters, I'm convinced that they're unique. There's no, I mean, there's, yeah, sure, there's some fundaments, but it's, I just think it's unique to each individual.
As I know, you guys like Daz, and you know, you've been doing this a really long time. A lot of you guys have, but like sometimes I'll just be in stage 2, and I'm getting descriptors, and then I'll get an AOL. Like I just did one of Paul's target vaults, and I got, you know, I've got a couple descriptors, and then I get an AOL of mountain climbers. I can actually see them, you know, like hang on the mountain, you know, which I put in the AOL. But there was something about that specifically. Like for one, I looked at my data and I noticed that nothing that I had put down so far built up to that AOL, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Yeah. So. But I didn't want to let it go. I mean, I put it down as AOL. I did include it in my summary, and it turned out it was like a mountain. You know, it was like a mountainside. You know, people would be mountain climbing on. But have you found that you'll get sporadic pieces of information a little early on in the stages that you know might, you know, you just don't want to let go of? You know, it has some kind of attachment, but you trust yourself enough to, you know, like I said, I included it in my summary, but I did write it up as an AOL. Has that happened to you guys?
Yeah. All the time. And in my sessions, if you can see any online and stuff, anything I know that, because learning RV isn't about learning, it really isn't about learning some kind of arcane method. It's over time, it's learning about you and how you process stuff. So when a word comes up, or something, or an image or a vision comes up that I know is a little bit different and kind of out of place, and I know it's subconscious is trying to tell me something. If it's a word, I'll underline the word, and if it's a vision or a picture or something, you know, even if I write it down in the column of AOL, I will put a little tick mark or a little mark down by the side of it. And then when I finished my RV and I'm looking for, you know, stage 5 stuff, when you're not in RV, you're not in active getting information mode anymore, I will then go back through my session, look at the words that I've underlined or put the little mark by, you know, because I've noticed it is something that's quite important and they're trying to tell me something. And then I'll take that into stage 5 and I'll break that down into all the little constituent parts to try to see what the real data in that is. But yeah, just make a little, you know, if you get these things and you think to yourself, hang on, you know, it's not necessarily an AOL, but it's a word that I don't use every day. I've never used, you know, if you get a word you've never used in your everyday language before, underline it or make a mark of it, because it's kind of, there's something it's trying to tell you there that, you know, if it's not your common
I love that about RV. When you get a sporadic word, like I never use that. It's always good data. Like so far, it's like I always make sure I write that down, because I'm like, utilitarian. I never use that word. I'm writing that down.
Absolutely. You get a word like that, write it down, or, you know, make a mark there, or even if you want to use a color pen or something to underline it, you know, just as a note to yourself so that you don't forget. And then when you go back through, you can say to yourself, hang on, this isn't common to me, so let me try to see what this is about. But be careful if you're doing it to AOLs, because you don't want to feed the AOL and make it anymore. But, you know, like you said, you have mountain climber as an AOL and it was quite strong for you and felt important, but the target was a mountain, you said. Now if you've taken that mountain climber into stage 5, you know, I usually do stage 5 where I mind map it, so I would have wrote mountain climber in the middle, and then I would have broke it down, and I would have broke it down literally like man, mountain, you know, and then the mountain, it would have been code or you know, whatever I would have got for the day. So I would have instantly broke down that mountain climber and got the real data out of it in the fake data. But I do, as I said, I do my stage 5 differently, because I don't like, I didn't get on with the normal CRV stage 5 of the columns, the word emanations and topics and subjects. Well, I found it too confusing. But, you know, go with whatever works for you. But yeah, any stuff like that, think about yourself, because it's you you're communicating with. It's you that's developing. You have to learn your own internal language, and it's your subconscious talking the language of you, saying, hey, this is almost like waving its hand, saying, look, this is important, I'm trying to tell you something. Mark it, and then try to have a look at it later. Yeah.
Do you see patterns in your own personal remote viewing, Daz, in that sense? Like, do you see, like, if you see it, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm constantly looking for stuff like that, you know, not that it always works out, but the target was actually a mountainside. I did get that, you know, the perception of two people hanging on a mountain, and you know, there's something, and then my sub kind of was telling me that's not the target per se. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like what we were discussing earlier. Have you ever been at that mountain that was the target, or a mountain similar to it?
No.
Well, that because you don't have that in your repertoire of internal memories and data, the target was using the next best thing. You've probably seen hundreds. I mean, you've probably seen hundreds of pictures of mountains and you know, film and that kind of stuff. But it was picking the next best thing to try to indicate that to you, which your subconscious was showing you a mountain climber. Maybe somewhere in your history, your memories or something, you've had some kind of tangible experience with a mountain climber, or maybe you've seen more pictures and videos of a mountain climber than you have of a mountain. You know, it was the next best thing it grabbed onto, just tried to say, hey, there's data here.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thank you.
It's not only that, it's when you watch movies, you get entranced and you become almost empathic at times. So you do get a sense of feeling, or several different feelings, when you get immersed in movies. So again, that can reference from the memory Rolodex and transpose over to the session as well. You look at the amount of movies that people have watched over the years and see how they become absorbed in certain movies more so than other ones.
That's a really good point, I think, and there's something to that where when you're really immersed in a movie, you've really forgotten about yourself, like you're not thinking about your own thought processes or anything, and I think too often we're just so distracted by our own self-judgments and commentary and everything like that, that it really creates some kind of wall between us and the information.
Yeah.
I think for me, the key moment in remote viewing for me came, I think it was after about 6 or 7 years of practice. And I don't know if you guys experienced, but in your early days, you know, you do your RV session as a practice, and you know, you're chomping at the bit. You can't wait to get that feedback in the door. You're like, you do your RV and you're like, I want my feedback. How did I do? You know, you really want to know you did. And then sometimes you're disappointed. Sometimes you're ecstatic. I think I got to a point of, and I don't know how it happened. It just is almost like a flick of a switch type thing. One day it just like, I just don't, you know, I literally don't care anymore. I don't, you know, if I never get feedback, it just doesn't matter to me. You know, the session is what it is. You know, I trust, you know, and it's like also, it's almost like I trust in myself what I'm getting and nothing else matters. And the moment that happened, that's when I felt my understanding and my accuracy of how it works for me just kind of like snowballed out the door. It was at the point where I just didn't care anymore. And I don't know, I can't tell you how to achieve that other than you get to a point where you trust yourself. You trust what you're getting and what you're putting down on paper, and it, you know, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you're not that enthusiastic. And you know, I do so many sessions now a week for crypto viewing and others that half the time I don't even know if I get the feedback for half the targets I do now, and I just, you know, it doesn't bother me in any way really. You know, I don't have that incessant need to know and to mark and do everything. I just trust in what you get. But again,
I find it funny how I'll go into a session and I'm like, ugh, I don't know, guys. I have no idea. And it's almost like the more completely clueless you are, the more you're on target. You know, the more unsure you were, at least for me at the stage I'm at. You know, like, I don't know. This is what I got. You nailed it. What?
And the inverse, when you think you know what it is, goodness God, when feedback comes, it's, you know, it's funny, the best thing that ever happened to me was getting in situations where I had no feedback at all. I literally sat right here where I'm sitting now and screamed at my left brain, if you will, how many times are you willing to be wrong before you stop guessing? And the urge for feedback is the urge to find out if you're right. And if you're wanting to be right, your session isn't going to go well. So as soon as I mean, I've probably got 40 sessions out there I've never heard a thing about. I don't care. And it's like Daz says, and I'm not at Daz's level. I'm not trying to say that, but the not caring and just doing it is completely antithetical to my nature. But now some of the products I'm getting back are much better than when I cared. So I don't know how to say it either, but it's a matter of just saying, I don't care if I'm right, here it is. And hopefully if I'm working with a team, hopefully the others are right. And that's it. And sure enough, your accuracy starts to go up. It's just a horrible paradox.
That was one of the first golden rules that Ed Danes taught, was don't invest in the outcome of the session. And yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. John, I don't know if you saw the chat list. Darby said, and this is a good topic. I like this topic. What was the primary reason TDS shut down?
Hot topic of conversation coming up.
I'm going to post it now, my explanation brief in the chat. And then we can talk about it. People.
It is covered in the
There it is.
It's covered in that video, isn't it? Where was it Ron Johnson was interviewing Prue? I can't remember what it was. Secret Rulers of the World 1, 2, and 3.
John Ronson, did did a film and interviewed her, but her reasons that she put forward are different from mine, which I put in the chat there. However, there's a lot of overlap. So the first reason, if people can see that in the chat, there's a couple of paragraphs. There were threats made against the people in Carlsbad who were the core. There were about 4 of them. Those of us not in Carlsbad, of which there were maybe 8 or 10 who were doing regular viewing, were not threatened. Second reason, burnout, because not only was there a successful company that was being run since about 1998 to 2003, but Prue, fortunately from the point of view of us who were students, got 6 months of intensive training with her and John and a guy named Mike on the phone, and also visits to Carlsbad. And by the time we ended, I was a training coordinator in Banana Slam. We had about 14 people, some of them in Britain who are still around, like Tunde. And then Athena, who came out of Atlanta with Courtney Brown, was running a looser program, more informal, with about 20 people. So we had 34 students at the same time this business was going on. And Prue at one point said, John, would you please try to, you're outside of the structure in Carlsbad, can you come up with a way to resolve all this so we don't have so much going on? So I came up with stuff, and she said, I don't like it. So that didn't happen. Third, the chief commercial client, due to recession, was lost. That was an insurance company. And Prue passed on one of the main smaller clients at the time to Angela Thompson-Smith, who had that same client for 14 years and has written about her work with that client quite a bit. And then 4, there was a patron, a famous Hollywood actress, who put $1 million into transdimensional. That's the largest amount that I'm aware of that anybody's ever invested. And there's a story about why that investment stopped. But that helped pay salaries of approximately $80,000 back then to 3 or 4 people for just a few years, and then it fell off rapidly, and I never was paid. Anyway, so those are some of the reasons about why TDS went out of business. Prue, after Prue shut down Transdimensional Systems on the dime in March of 2003, here we are with 34 students, and so Athena would say, well, what the hell happened? We don't know. So I said, Prue, please, I want to meet with you, find out what went on. So she said, oh. So we finally got together in Long Beach, and we're sitting in a Starbucks, and she gives me this story about which I guess I won't go into a lot of details, but basically we're terrible. We have bad people. We're not doing well. Our dad is all screwed up. And she didn't mention the threats at all. But when I left, she gave me this look, and that look I read as, I just pulled one over on you and you don't even know, do you? So that was the conclusion of it all. But then later we found out that there had been threats, and she was protecting us by not telling us the threats. But 3 or 4 viewers who were there in Carlsbad said, yes, there were absolutely threats against their lives, that they should stop. And this was ironic because we had done a lot of work, anti-terror work with the FBI back then. And so some other agency, it was felt, was affecting. And people should ask, why is it that only TDS has been threatened out of existence? Why is it that the only very strong woman who was leading a group, a successful group, the most successful company, why was that group forced out of existence? Very interesting questions to ask for those who follow the field. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
John, there's a lot of unanswered questions that I would love one day to sit down with Prue, or maybe do a Zoom talk or something to try to get to the root of what happened back then. But do you think we'd ever be able to get to that stage of knowing more?
Well, just from what I understand, Prue has cut off contact with all of us when she dropped out of the field in 2003. One of the people was in contact with her as recently as 7 years ago, is what I heard, and that she's doing all right. And I also looked her up. She was in a southwestern state, enrolled in a college, but she refused to get in touch with any of us. I think because she was threatened she shut it all down and went on to another life. Whenever she would pop up and post things, she said, I'm always attacked. So I said, well, we're out there trying to defend the fort here. So it's a complicated story, and I don't know. Maybe you're young enough that you might get to hear from Prue, within the next 5 or 10 or 20 years. I don't know. I hope so. And maybe John knows more than he's saying. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so too, because some of the people here probably don't know the background and all this, but Prue was under a lot of stress because and she's the only remote viewer out there that had, and I think it's still up there. There's a hate website against her, wasn't there?
Yes, it's still up. Yes.
What was it called? Do you know what the address of it is? Because it's still up now, and to this day, many of us tried to do lots of investigation into the people behind the website. But even down to who bought the domain name that is on, it's all anonymous and done in such a way that it's very hard to trace. I mean, we've heard some suggestions of who might be behind it that we've internally discussed. But even to this day, is it still? Do you know what the address is, so I can have a look at it here?
Yeah, it's Prue Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really terrible, and I tried to trace, even through ICANNs, to see who was the owner and.
Is that PrueWatch.com or something? Yeah. I can share the screen here and show some of the guys here. I mean, it's pretty bad, but I can show you some of the guys.
It's really bad.
So here's the website here, and it's just not nice stuff. I can't remember where the worst of it was.
Well, and there's something on there on one of the pages where it's a threat to all remote viewers. It's saying if you get out of hand like Prue did, this is what's going to happen to you. Like it says that almost maybe not those exact words, but it's very strongly implying that.
Yeah. It's just not nice, and some of us had an idea of who was behind this, but it's shocking that it's still up now. Because how long has this been up now? It's got to have been since 2003. It says here. So what's that? 17 years now. This is still up there, and so someone out there in the community or a larger community is still paying for this to be up after 17 years.
And they make updates. They update it.
Oh, it's been updated. Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? When was the last? I thought it hadn't been for some years.
No, I would say maybe when I checked, maybe 2 years ago, there were updates from maybe what I had seen the year before.
This is part of the hidden history of remote viewing
Yeah.
that will one day maybe.
You know, I want to make, I have a fantasy of making a documentary called Searching for Prue, and like telling the story, and then it would end with her finally coming forward. If anyone has an interest in that, I'd love to do it, but would need some resources and some.
I mean, you know, as we've discussed the history of remote viewing, and some of the guys here don't know that, and that's why I wrote the article recently. Is, you know, because some of this warring within remote viewing, you know, remote viewing does have undercurrents. You know, a lot of the people do not, you know, although they appear to on the surface, they do not get on with each other. You know, all these different clans, and you know, when you have websites like this Prue Watch that's, you know, been up for 17 years. And it claims to be satire, but you know, it really, when you really get down to the core of it, the things they were saying about Prue and Sandy Frost and stuff is just literally. I mean, in today's society, you know, it's just hate. In today's society, with where we come now, this wouldn't be allowed. Which may be a reason, you know, that may be an impetus why we might be able to do something maybe legally to see who is behind this, you know, because times have moved on now and you can't say this kind of thing about a person and get away with it anymore.
I don't know much about the history, but is this Prue? Is this someone that was married to Ed Dames back in the day, or is this a totally different person?
No,
Prue is not connected with Ed Dames at all. No.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah. What was I going to say? On a positive note, you know, John Vivanco, who was number 2, as it were, to Prue, who was inactive for maybe 8 or 9 years, and he's back teaching. He's one of my teachers. He's working with Julia Mossbridge, you know, who is that rare person like Deborah, who's both a researcher and a remote viewer. And John's working on a new manual. He's teaching again. I said, you know, I heard he was teaching a course. I said, do you want any advertising on Facebook? He said, no, I've already got 20 students and I can't handle more than that per class. So that's still out there. He's probably developed it further. As I mentioned, he said he found that you really don't need ideograms, although that's what we were taught, and he probably still teaches them. I think he does. So that guy's a live wire. He's still maybe 50 years old. He's still got a lot of years ahead of him, and the TD method will survive.
It definitely is an interesting story, though, and yeah, I like Deborah's idea of a documentary, but I like the idea of a larger documentary or series where, or maybe even a book. I'd like to do a book that does, you know, from the 90s onwards, the entire underground history of remote viewing. But like Ingo, and I spoke to Ingo about his book because he started doing his book, the story of remote viewing, the real story of remote viewing. And when I met him, I said, look, please continue the book. You know, it's fantastic. We want to see the end of it. And he said to me at the time, he said, I would love to, but I can't continue doing the book because I would have to hurt a lot of my friends, and I don't want to hurt a lot of my friends. I feel the same, you know, with all the stuff that I've collected and seen over years, because I got terabytes of communications with people underground, you know, from way back when in remote viewing. It would be good to see that as a historical document, but at the same time, a lot of that stuff would cause some very serious arguments. You know, remote viewing history. You know, we have to admit, you know, we have to be honest about our history. It's not all chocolates and roses.
Indeed.
Okay, so yeah, the address is there in the chat if anyone wants it. I haven't checked this with you guys yet. Do you guys get the chance to download the chat? Because I have a save chat button here. I don't know if you guys have one as well. And if not, at the end of each meeting we have, I could essentially save the chats as independent files and post them as well.
We can save them, yes, we can.
Excellent.
You click on the 3 dots down at the lower right, and you can. I've done it before. You can save the chat.
But yeah, the TDS thing I love. I think is a fantastic story in itself. I think it was covered well in that 3-part documentary, Secret Rulers of the World, wasn't it? It was about, which is very good. And Prue did.
John's book, I put it in the chat box. John Knowles here. He talks about this, and It's a great book, Remote Viewing from the Ground Up.
It's got a fantastic cover, that book.
Thank you, Deborah.
But yeah, the TDS thing is fantastic, and I always loved the way Prue went about it, and I loved her Aura Bomb booklet thing because I liked her approach, how she took what she learned and she kind of demilitarized it. She made it all friendly. You know, it wasn't like targets and words that had that kind of military connotation to it. And I can understand how that would resonate with a lot of people better than the codeness of things like CRV.
Yeah, another aspect of this is that some of the new moderators on the Reddit subreddit remote viewing, I think 2 of them have studied with John. So that perspective is being brought over there. And by the way, that's quite an interesting group for those not familiar with it. There's 12,000 members of the subreddit there. They've got a great research section. They are integrating new people who are flooding into them. So that's another place to visit if you're interested, because the conversations are somewhat different and different people that are on the 2 main Facebook channels. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been over there. I'm over there quite regularly. I don't hang around as much as I should because quite a lot of it is like new questions, you know, and some of it's a bit basic. But I have done a Ask Me Anything session with them, and I think Edward Riordan had one as well.
How's your future forecast look, Daz? More doom and gloom?
Well, funny you asked. We did June's, although we're a couple of days in June. We did it last night. So for me, this is, you know, in the last 24 hours, this is my third multiple hour Zoom meeting. So we did, you know, last night, 1 o'clock in the morning, I did a 3-hour Zoom meeting with the crypto guys. So, and we all went through our our data for June. Oh no! You think you've hit the bottom. You think you've seen the worst you could see, and then you get another month. You just like, oh, I just want to, you just want to give up. And you know, the thing
right down the toilet.
You do see the thing you do, and it's hard because the world's going through so much turmoil anyway, and it's hard not to have that show up in your remote viewing data because it's actually happening. But there's lots. Yeah, there was lots of stuff. Earthquake, volcano stuff across the board between 5 viewers. There was some space stuff. There was, you know, we were all getting lots of stuff that's happening with Civil War type stuff, you know, which I think was coming right from all the stuff that's happening in America. Because essentially, I think you are going to be going through some kind of like Civil War type thing at the moment.
Whoa.
That space stuff, Des. Did you get any follow-up from the last month's session about things going on up there?
I didn't get. Did I get any of that? No, I didn't get any of that. One of the viewers that I'm training, Dennis, who does the production of it, he got lots of space stuff. I think they'll be putting that in the video. I don't know if they put his sessions in the video, but he had lots of space stuff, which was very interesting. Which does tally to previous stuff. And me and Hitomi had quite a lot of interesting stuff coming out of China, which looks a bit worrying. But
so there's going to be a second wave, and it's going to go downhill even more.
No, it wasn't coronavirus stuff. It was strategic and military movements.
No, I'm talking about the general.
The general gist was just bad all over. You know, more riots, more deaths, civil war kind of status kind of thing because of what's happening in the US. There was lots of stuff about second emergencies of viruses. I'm just trying. 3 or 4 of us had. No, 3 of us had natural events. Mine was more earthquakey, but the other 2 people definitely had volcano-y type data. Yeah.
Very similar to Courtney's summation too, and his guys.
I don't know. I don't ever watch the Far Side stuff anymore, so I don't know, because I don't want to influence myself in any way. So I try not to watch anyone else's work on future predictions. But it was all. I won't say it was all dark, because me and Edward both went out of our way to try to find something positive and report on something positive in the month. And but most of it was, bad. But how can you not get bad stuff when your entire environment's bad around you? It's very noisy. It's a very noisy situation to try to do predictive remote viewing at the moment. To be very honest, it's very, very hard to do and not be influenced. You can sit down and say, okay, I want to see what the news is going to be like for June, or if we did it now for July. Your mind would be playing with you. It'd be saying, oh, but look at all the stuff that's happening with the violence, and you've got the virus everywhere. It's hard to put all that to one side.
Did you get anything? Oh, sorry. Did you get anything else about the Civil War part of it?
Let me see. Let me see if I can show you. It's easier if I show you. I don't know if I should be showing you, because it might be proprietary to Crypto Viewing, but I don't think they'll mind. They're pretty nice guys. So I did that May. Bear with me a second, guys. May news. Finding the sessions on my hard disk here is a bit. Okay, I'll give you a quick glance at what I did. That'd be easier. I'm sure they won't mind. Okay, so first global news here, page 1. Lots of people in a messy confrontation. Lots of distress and anger and retaliation. I'll tell you what I got, actually, that happened in the US. I got this thing about it's not a civil war, but not a civil war like the old civil war that you had, but essentially a civil war that's going to happen, or is happening. And I have things like 13 days of pain you're going to go through here at the bottom. And I had all this data. I kept getting this imagery of there was a really bad revenge attack where some police, I felt it was more police than soldiers, I think, where police were going to be not hijacked, ambushed and killed, which was going to be quite bad in a warm urban city. So I kept getting all this stuff here, lots of splits, revenge attacks essentially in this kind of civil war type situation. Top UK news: someone caught in a lie and the situation implodes, and it feels like this is someone high up in our political circle here, and they're going to be called out as a liar, all this kind of stuff. And this is a continuation of that. Yeah, and some data about the virus returning a bit more, pockets of re-emergence in the UK. Top global crypto news. I felt like there was going to be a market drop. Bitcoin and its following coins would be dropping down, and maybe Bitcoin would go down to about 6K. It's up at nearly 10 at the moment, but we're already in the month, so we'll see how that goes down. If it goes down to 6K, it'd be bad for some people, but good for me, because I'll buy another chunk, because when it goes down below that price, that's great, because I think in 2 years it's going to be skyrocketing. So good for me. Global market news. I felt that something was going to explode in the US this month, and I don't know if it meant physical explosion, but something was going to explode, which called an event which causes a market drop late in the month, though, not early in the month. This is well past the mid-range of the month. Felt like it had something to do with Trump or something. I couldn't work out what it was, but I just kept this feeling that something big is coming and it's going to negatively affect the markets and make them drop. Then I had other top news, and I had this weird ideogram here, something like I've never had before. And this is where I had this very strong natural event, which felt like it was waves penetrating land. It felt south of the equator, and I got an AOL here of earthquake. And again on the next page there with these waves, and I wrote 6.5 there. So I had this natural event with deep penetrating waves into the earth. Dick and Edward had penetrating waves and stuff coming up out of the earth, because they had some kind of volcano-y type thing. So we were all picking up on some kind of natural event. I was just trying to draw my map here where I'm looking north here, and I had an equator line, and it felt like it was south of the equator line, but I couldn't quite work out where in the world it was. Then I tried to look at top COVID news, and I just kept getting a still here with resistance and a really strong dark ideogram here. And people there in just people with a re-emergence. And then some final stuff, I just kept getting this stuff about China and a backlash, and how China's going to make seize the opportunity to make a strategic move. Feels like there's this kind of dual thing happening in China where they're having this internal conflict, and there's some simmering anger there. And half the people want to act, and they try to make this almost like a chess move type situation. They strategic move military wise, and I had an AOL there that it would be based around a ship movement. And my positive news, I asked, because it was all negative, I was like, oh damn, this is terrible. So I asked at the top there, is anything good going to happen in June? And I just had this weird, I couldn't really sketch it, but I don't know if it's DNA or some kind of microscopic kind of thing here, but I felt like there was going to be some kind of medical breakthrough at a microscopic kind of level with cells or DNA or something. And I had an AOL there at the bottom of a device that does gene splicing called CRISPR. So just some final notes there about it being scary, messy, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So
I like how you queued that up. Anything good? Like it's so bad. You're just
like,
yeah.
Because, I literally just sit there and say to myself, okay, what's the top news in the world going to be? What's the top news in the US going to be? What's the top news for the cryptos going to be? Because, we got people that want to know about cryptos. What's top news in the UK going to be? Because that's where I live. And then, you get this month after month and you think yourself, oh my God, it's just always bad. But of course, when you're looking for top news, and if you guys follow the news like I do, the news it's always negative anyway, because positive news hardly makes it to be the top news that's recorded. So I've never done that before. I just said, oh, come on, show me something good at least. And and I might do that again, because that was quite a cute cue, and then it came back with some interesting information. So I might try that each time, is always try to cue for something good for a change.
Your ideograms are really cool. That one with the energy going down is really powerful.
Well,
they look spontaneous.
Well, see, this is the thing. 20 years ago, my ideograms were set. Absolutely set. And they worked every single time, and it was never off. Now they've changed. And, as Joe McMonagle says in the article that I wrote and stuff, and everyone knows your ideograms change over time. My ideograms change over time, and it's not about what they look like anymore. Or sometimes it is, but I know that I probe it first, for the feeling motion of it and stuff. And whatever that is, that supersedes whatever it looks like for me. But yeah, they are generally, I would say now 75% spontaneous rather than. But it's still my own personal ideogram language, and I think that's what it is for everyone. You build your own kind of internal language. You kind of know over, after doing this for 24 years, you kind of know if your pen's doing a certain movement that is kind of trying to tell you something because you trust in yourself. But yeah, they are mainly spontaneous now.
And that smiley face that you do with your signature, do you do that all the time or just when? Do you do that just when you feel good about your session?
On the really bad ones, it has a droopy face.
No, let's do it.
I do a smiley face on every session.
Well, I'll have some soup or something probably.
I don't know why. It's just one of those things that happened one day about, I don't know, must have been about 8-10 years ago or something, and now I just draw a face at the end of each. Maybe it's my signature to say, okay, it's ended, I'm off, I've finished. Leave me alone. I don't want any bleed through. And yeah, maybe it's that. It's almost my own little signature stroke ritual, I guess.
Yeah, because I've a couple of your sessions I've seen that were really good. You had that, so I was just wondering if I know I occasionally have this urge to do a smiley face at the end of the session, and it usually turns out to be a really good one. I definitely don't have that urge with a lot of them, but that's kind of cool.
Maybe it's I haven't really thought about it, to be honest, but maybe it is a subconscious thing. Maybe it's trying to tell me something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to relook at all my old sessions now and give them a mark based on the smiley face at the end to see if it's accurate or not. I haven't really thought about that. It might be another form of language there. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just hit it with a target number.
Sorry?
Just do a session on it. Purpose, reason.
I've never done a personal session.
No, not a personal session, just a question about this smiley face. What is the purpose or the function?
I was asking about pens. No, I don't use a pen anymore because I do all my work on tablets now, which is absolutely fantastic. Whenever you guys get there, I wouldn't go do it straight away. I would do it on paper until you're competent. But then when I did do it on pens, I used these Uniball rotor pens. Me and Dick and a few others absolutely love these because they just got such a beautiful flow about them. Yeah, so Uniball these are, and it's great on eBay because you know I bought like a pack of about 15 for a few pounds on eBay at a time. But so I don't use them anymore because it's all tablet based for me. I love the tablet because I can do the RV session in the garden or anywhere. I don't have to scan the paper in anymore. I just press a button and email it to the crypto viewing people and make myself a backup without any scanning, and it saved me huge amounts of paper and everything. But don't use a tablet yet if you're new. It's best to do everything on paper first until you got it down.
I'd like to return to what you were talking about before, if I could. And then I have one other topic. I don't know how long you want to go. It's a rather delicate thing. One of the people on the subreddit, Remote Viewing, a guy who's been following things, he's an active viewer in APP. He's making statements like, nobody admits when they get a miss. Nobody admits when they get a miss. I said, well, Daz has admitted to me that he often used to be off and he makes misses. Well, this guy was going across the board. Nobody admits a miss. So he said Daz has had, the crypto viewing has had one miss or more. He doesn't go behind the paywall. And he said Courtney's had misses. So I guess I'm just raising, Daz, if crypto viewing is publicizing their hit-miss ratio, or if you care to comment on that or not, you know, it's up to you. You're muted.
I'm the only one at the moment that's databasing stuff, and let me see if I can put it up. To be honest, it's hard to do because we got like 5 viewers now because Hitomi joined us. And like for the news, you know, you just saw what I did for the news. And in there, let me see if I got my database here. In there, just for my news things alone for June there, where there was probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 predictions. So, you know, if you've got 5 viewers and they're doing 10 or 12 predictions each, and you're doing it on a monthly basis, and then you're trying to get the feedback from it. I've only done it on a couple months because I'm finding it very hard to do it. And I tried to get the guys to do their own, and they won't do their own because when you're doing this for a business, the moment you've done an RV session, within a day you've got your next one in your inbox, and you're worrying about that rather than trying to go back and mark up your 10 predictions that you did a month ago. But let me see if I can find it here a second. So no, we haven't databased it all at the moment. We got aims to database it all. I started it, but only for 1 month. Where did I put that database? I am databasing the ARV projects because I don't know how I got into being the person that's running ARV projects because I've always hated ARV, but I'm running the ARV projects, and I got one ongoing at the moment. Carl's just done and Darby's just done, so I'm not going to say anything about that one. Where's this database? So all I've done is at the moment is 1 month because I've literally just started this, but I can show you roughly what I've started to do. Let's try to get this out of the way. So my predictions for April, these are all mine here, and Dick's are there, then there's Edwards, and there's Sita's there. So we didn't have many people work April. We only have 4. We got 5 now. So, you know, these are the predictions when they were made, when the RV was done, and what kind of topic it was about. I don't know if you can see that there. And then the prediction itself, and then if it's a hit or a miss or unknown, and then the source file for the feedback to prove whether it was or not, and then some notes. So on April, I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 predictions. And I got marked down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as hits. 1 is a maybe, hard to determine, and 2 are unknown. I just couldn't find any feedback for if they were hits or not. So, you know, that would be something like 7 out of 10 in that month. The others, I'm trying to get them to do theirs because I don't want to do all theirs each month. I'm trying to get them each month to mark their own predictions and give me the feedback on it so I can keep a database, because I can't do everyone's for them. You know, 50 to 70 predictions a month to try to track. But that's all we're doing, other than the remote viewing community in Patreon and on our website and themselves, you know, having conversations with us and coming back with feedback for us and saying, hey, look, this is a hit. What do you think? And hey, look, you said this, but this is a miss. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing all that. But I think his question was more specifically about your crypto predictions too.
I don't think they're marked up in any way. That's something else I would like to go, but I would like to go back through all our RV for all the cryptos and put them in a database and then see how they've come out as well. I know that the ARV ones that I've run as projects are doing very well. The binary ARV ones weren't. I'm just trying to work out, can I show these predictions? I can't really, because some of the viewers are in here. I'm databasing some of the ARVs, well, all the ARV stuff. The early binary ones, we had a rate of, how many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 just binary ARV ones. Some of them are long term, you see, so it's very hard for me. We're waiting. I can't really mark them because we're waiting on 1, 2, 3. We're waiting on four of them because they got their long term ARV predictions going way to 2026. So it's hard for me to determine. Yeah. But the ARV binary ones that we did that I can determine, we were passing on, I'd say 30% or more of them, because it was just too close with displacement. And yeah, most of them are waiting. But the unitary ones, all the ones that we've done so far, but again, it's small numbers. I've only done 4 because there's only me running them. And I got one on the boiler at the moment, but all 4 that we've done so far, actually I've got 2 on the boiler because we've got a Trump one. But the 4 main ones that I've done, I've got 100% hit rate on the unitary ones of those.
Thanks for sharing all that, especially for the unitary ones, which is my main interest. Yeah.
The unitary approach, and you know, I've been trying to teach Tunde to use it as well. He showed me something he did recently, but he made a few mistakes on that. What's interesting me at the moment is I ran 2 unitary ARV predictions. We're using different viewers, one not on Facebook and one not of our crypto viewer people, which is, you know, Darby here and Carl's 2 of them. Both the ARV projects were separate, with a couple of months apart, but both independent projects, unitary ARV, said Trump was going to win. And this is when he was at the height of it, you know, everyone was like, oh, we love Trump, we love Trump, we love Trump. And now I'm looking at everything that's happening and I'm thinking to myself, are these 2 going to completely fail? I can't, at this moment in time, I can't see how he's going to win, but we'll wait and see. But someone that's I've been speaking to quite a lot about ARV, and it might be possible that they're onto something. It was indicating to me that when you set the viewers the task to do the ARV, they're giving you the data, the most probable outcome, not in the future, but at that exact moment they're RVing. So we'll see. You know, if Trump loses, and I've got 2 unitary ARVs that are done at the height of him thinking he's going to win, that said he's going to win, and then if he loses and he doesn't, then there might be something in that it's at the point where they're doing the RV that you're just recording the most probable at that time, not actually going to the future, getting the data, and then bringing it back. But we'll wait. That's a wait and see. But at the moment, I'm like thinking I've got 2 separate ARVs, and they're both saying he's going to win, and the news isn't looking good.
I've got mixed feelings about that, as you can see. Yeah. Anyway, but thanks again for sharing all this. Hardly anybody's sharing this kind of information about the actual work that's going on. I really appreciate.
Yeah,
that.
the unit, you know, and the unitary. As I said, I don't like ARV. You know, because I don't know. It's just not something I've ever been interested in too much. But no, I don't know how I got stuck with doing these projects and running all the viewers and stuff. But I am. But it is kind of interesting. But the binary ARV, I just I could not find a way to get that to work. But the unitary one makes sense.
I just remember back for folks who are new, but so Tunde and Daz and I were all in Aurora about 10 years ago, and I got interested in ARV, and I remember Tunde saying, "Oh, I'm not interested in that," and Daz still not interested. But it's become so prominent that so many people are doing it. And I really spent the last 10 years about it, trying to get numbers. I should have spent more time trying to get words and letters, but that'll come too. But been working on numbers for quite a while. So anyway, glad you're joining the show here a little bit on it.
Could you explain the Unitarian? I mean, I know what the binary is, but how does that work? How does the Unitarian work?
Well, the real quick explanation, I suppose, is that you just have one target. Another 30 seconds is that in APP, we actually tried several versions of having one target. You have 2 separate teams. One team has one object, and they're only going to view that object. The other team has the other object, which relates to the same event. That actually didn't seem to be an improvement. And so then I said, well, let's call it strict unitary ARV. That's another version where we're just going to view, say, one photo. That's what Daz is doing now. Or let's view the emotions of a random assortment of people for an event. And we've done trials with that. It's written up in Daz's 8 Martinis. So that's what we mean. There's different forms of unitary, actually, but the main one is to have one target and a photo.
I'll see. Let me bear with me a second. I'll see if I can pull one up to show you.
Thanks, John.
I'm just trying to think. What year? There's one. I'm just going to try to pull this up here to show you if I can find the report. I did a video on it, and it went online. Let me see if I can get this up to show you a sec. So this was the Trump one, so it's all right for you guys to see this one. I think it's online somewhere anyway. So essentially, it's still a binary target as such, but there's only one. So it has an A component, and on this one it is: would Donald Trump be reelected? If it is, they'll see this. If he isn't, they'll see something else. But in normal binary ARV, you usually have a person selecting 2 photo targets and keeping them in a pool. But I think the action of me as a tasker, putting my focus and picking 2 actual physical photographs to compete against each other, I think that then leads to displacement. Because there are 2, but the unitary approach is you have one photo. Not the photo is not the target, of course. The actual location is the target for one event, and then you don't essentially pick the second event. We say here, if it's not that, then the remote viewer will just view anything else, and that will be the second target. So I'm not actually putting my intention in picking a physical picture or target there to cause some kind of distraction. So this was the target for you. This was if Donald Trump gets reelected, the viewers would see this. If he doesn't, then they would just describe anything else other than that Devil's Tower. And there's some of the data. And I think, you know, pretty much all the data came in as, and I think we had an independent analysis on this as well, as more of that data than anything else. Let me see if I can zoom this up a bit for you to see it, because that's probably quite small.
Has that been a better approach, John, as far as percentage accuracy? Does it go up going at that instead of binary? Have you found that?
It is for me. Using the binary approach, we were getting lots of passes on and lots of displacement. So it was, you know, most viewers were reporting both targets, and it was very hard to discern on the information. And I was getting a very low hit rate, whereas all 4 of the ones we've done using this approach have all been hit so far. 100% hit rate. So that's just how I marked it. You know, I initially asked if the viewers had contact, and then if that contact's medium, high, or low, and if it matches the photo target, or if it looks like the A target. And, you know, on that one, there is on 3 of the viewers, they do get target data that matches A and another target. So there is a little bit of displacement, but nowhere near as much as what we were getting before. But we had some really good high contacts on there and some really good medium contacts with only 1 very low contact. So, you know, that was like a strong indicator that dude would win on that, in that case. But, you know, we're waiting on that one. And at the time, it looked good. It, you know, all the indicators were that Trump was doing well. But now I'm like thinking, oh dear. But, you know, as I said, I've done the weird thing on that one was I ran that project twice with different viewers, different targets, and both of them independently said Trump was going to win. So we will wait and see on that one, see how that one falls out. Okay, any other questions or anything anyone wants to discuss here?
I had one more topic, but it's getting late. You got time?
I'm all right if you guys are all right.
So the topic is bootstrapping. Somebody raised on the subreddit remote viewing. Has remote viewing ever been used to improve remote viewing? You know, bootstrapping, in other words, you use remote viewing to find out what should improve, what could improve remote viewing. So there was one experiment that Igor in Croatia ran about the cause of displacement. That's one that's been done, but the results are sort of mixed. I'm talking to someone who was involved with that to see what he thinks. I looked at the data too and wasn't overwhelmed. But so I wonder if anybody else is aware of any attempts to use remote viewing to improve remote viewing.
Didn't Edward Reardon go after something like that, Daz? I thought he tried to turn remote viewing on itself somehow.
I don't recall, to be honest. If anyone has, it would be Edward, though, because he does like to do those interesting projects. I haven't personally, though, and I haven't seen anything anywhere. The hard thing would be feedback, I guess. Though, wouldn't it? How would you set up a project to do it? I don't know how you'd set it up, really.
I'm pretty sure Edward has something on that. I'm pretty sure.
What
Okay,
I've
thanks, I'll check with him.
What I've done a lot, I wouldn't call it remote viewing, but more clairvoyant reading is because I do teach a lot of classes in that. And so I'll have my students read each other to see what they can do personally to improve their psychic work or remote viewing work. So it's not overall as a field, but what can individuals do to adjust themselves? And we found that there are really a lot of individual adjustments. I mean, there's themes that come up, but it's individualized.
I was just about to ask that question. Do you ever team up with a remote viewer that you trust to remote view where you might have stumbling blocks or where you can make improvements?
Yes. So basically that. And you could even have the person start to do a session and then look at them while they're doing the session to see what's happening. You know, and you'll get a whole range of just their logical mind jumping in, or maybe they need to adjust their energy system in some way. One thing that has come up a lot is just that people are so busy in their lives. And so even if they're not busy in the moment when they're doing the session, that busyness can sometimes create an issue. So.
Well, thank you for the feedback on that. I'll check with Edward.
Yeah, John, if you go to Edward's free YouTube channel, he actually has not presented it in a comprehensive question like you said, but he has looked at many aspects of remote viewing through various sessions. And some of it is really, really interesting.
Oh, good. I didn't know that. I'll check that out too.
Yeah. And some of them are way down in the queue of all the videos he's done, but his titles are usually really indicative of what the session was.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to say to you, Daz, on the topic of moon drop, I sent you a private message. Did you ever see the conversation between Jeff Rentz and Ingo on the moon?
Not that it's in my memory. I don't know.
I sent you that. It's like a 2-hour interview. Unfortunately, there's some fairly long commercial segments in it, but you can blast those. But it's a full-on discussion specifically on the moon, and Ingo brought up a lot of history on the moon and some other things outside of remote viewing, but in line with your Project Moondrop considerations, you might enjoy looking at that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything moon based. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. I've just posted a link in the chat there to Edward Riordan's video channel. He has quite a lot of interesting videos there, guys. So there's a lot there to keep you interested for quite a while. So subscribe with all the remote viewers with their YouTube channels. If you find any, please subscribe and like their videos and stuff, because it's a thankless, hard job to do when posting videos for people to do. Just in recording like this one, this one that goes on for like 3 hours this evening. It takes another 2 hours for Zoom to render the video to my hard disk, and then it takes probably another 4 hours to get it up on YouTube. So there's a lot of time involved in people doing these videos and that. So it's nice to give them a like and subscribe to their channels and stuff, because it helps them a long way. And Edward's doing well at the moment with nearly 9,000 subscribers, and it's a good resource. Okay, we're running at 2.5 hours. I don't mind staying on if you guys want to chat, or if you run out of things to say this evening, or anyone else got anything they want to discuss?
I got something real quick. Hopefully it should be real quick. So I saw someone on I think it was on your Facebook page. Someone cited, I don't know if it was like something from Ingo wrote or a video, but it was set in 1971. I'm going to kind of paraphrase what it was. I think it was like Ingo was sitting looking at something, and he had a choice to either, it said either change history or alter history, or to invalidate himself. And he said he chose to invalidate himself. Does anyone know what that was? It would have been in 1971, so I don't remember that place as Ingo exactly.
Yeah. I know what it is. Rick, this gatehouse business throws me off. It actually comes from a 1973 interview with Advanced Magazine, which was Scientology's celebrity magazine. So they interviewed Ingo in 1973 and 1978. Rick re-quoted my favorite quote actually out of those. And that's kind of what I think you're talking about. And it wasn't that he chose to invalidate himself. He chose to validate. So from the perspective that Ingo had while he was interviewed with Scientology. It's a bit different than interviews when he's been interviewed by other agencies. But what he said was when he realized that he could affect the magnetometer, he felt the weight of the reality that it would change history. And then he considered intentionally, should I withdraw from this and invalidate myself and my abilities, or should I not? And he decided to go for it, change history, and validate these abilities. When you read further behind the scenes, it wasn't a self act. He wanted humanity to know what was possible. So he elaborates on that self-conversation, if you will, before he actually decided. Do you want me to post the link to those interviews in the chat?
Yeah, I'd like to read that. That's interesting.
Okay, and then I didn't mean to step on Rick. Rick, you were the one that re-quoted that very critical thing. So whatever you were going to say, I'll shut my thing off here.
No, that's fine, Russell. It was really in relation to the previous week's discussion with Starfire, because I think he was referencing that in the book, which was applicable to the interview on that particular quote.
Cool. Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
Oh, I have a question about, so basically this is the topic of Ingo Swann influencing. He had an opportunity to influence this meter. I'm just trying to get this straight because I do have a question about influencing. I don't see that it's mentioned very often here, and when it is, it's kind of brushed aside as though it's not a big deal, and maybe even it maybe makes people uncomfortable to some degree. It seems perhaps that it might. But I guess I'm very curious because I'm new at remote viewing, but I have amazing feedback in remote influencing being a healer, and to me, and in a lot of those literatures that teach you how to do that, the feedback is phenomenal, and it's scientifically tested with doctors and things like this. And so I wonder, when you are open to remote view to some degree, or to a huge degree, if this is what you're trying to do, and I hear easier than I see, because of course I've been dealing with healer, in a healing modality and neurolinguistics programming. I have to listen to inflection, to vocabulary, the way it's being said, body language, things like this. But when you're open to that and you get a stream of consciousness that you can actually see and try to feel and try to touch, like you would if you were trying to affect something in someone's body, where is the idea that that's not able to happen, or that it can't happen on a very substantial basis?
I think it gets brushed off, at least in the Facebook groups, a lot, probably because it's kind of a different thing, and it's constant. And like, there's always, like in the groups, and I think you're in the same group, there's constantly posts of just stuff that isn't necessarily remote viewing. It's just kind of a different thing.
I think.
Well, I mean, I hate to interrupt, but I tend to disagree. I just think that your target is more of a human target. You're targeting in on a trauma or PTSD, and you have to go back with these people and view and get a sense of when this happened, and then stop at that point and not just view it and record it, but you have to lend help to change the neuro connection to the to the emotional body, so that it's not replaying in the psyche constantly. And so you have to get hands-on with this memory, whether real or imagined, in a historical sense, and help them undo it, help them go through it. But you have to see it and feel it as well. And then measurements are taken immediately afterly. You know, between 1 and 10, this post-traumatic situation that you had on the work field with your buddy, between 1 and 10, it's a 10. He's sweating, he's got physical stuff happening. I mean, and then when we're finished between 1 and 10, he can't even remember it. You know, I have to have people sign that they're not going to testify in court, because we're going to go that deep and dislodge this from your psyche. So my question is when I don't understand how a really good remote viewer can go and see an action happen between human beings. Say this is not just land coordinates with machinery and what have you. Say this is an interaction between human beings, and you actually see this happen. And I've even heard other remote viewers saying they know I'm there. They know I'm there. And they're telling me to go, and there's some even communication, go away, get away, or what have you. Is this so rare that there's just not a lot of, or is it uncomfortable? I mean, just honestly, because it's like an everyday occurrence in some fields of psychic work, you know?
It's proving it though, isn't it? Pretty much everything else we do in remote viewing can be later assessed against feedback for accuracy. On some of the stuff you're talking about, you know, possibly affecting someone, there has to be a solid way to feedback that information. Some people within the remote viewing community do teach and do that. I think Deborah Lynn Katz does it, and I think Laurie Williams do kind of medical applications of remote viewing. So that's essentially remote influencing. We tend not to talk about it too much in public circles because, you know, essentially in groups like Facebook, you'll get someone coming in and they have hardly none to very limited knowledge of remote viewing, and they'll want to learn how to remote view someone or influence someone.
Right.
It's usually in an unethical way that they want to do, and so we try to discourage them looking in that direction.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
And even like on because there are two main remote viewing Facebook groups at the moment. There's remote viewing on its own, and which is Russell's an admin, and some of the other people here are admins of. And there's my one, which is remote viewing and remote viewers. One's a public forum, and I believe they do to a certain degree accept targets. But on mine, I had to stop people setting targets because you would literally get someone come on, know nothing about remote viewing, come on and say, okay, I want remote viewers to remote view this as a target for me. And then you'd have remote viewers do it, not knowing if they were doing something unethical, not knowing if they were doing something illegal. Yes. You know, there are limitations. You have to be very careful because this is a very powerful kind of tool that could be up to misuse, really. So the remote viewing is discussed a lot, but the remote influencing is kept a bit lower down because it's more apt to being abused, I think, and people are a bit worried about that.
I think that's exactly what I needed to hear, because I too believe that there is a huge ethical responsibility, especially when you're dealing with human beings versus just, you know, land targets, gestalts, or what have you. I think there's a huge ethical responsibility there. And I guess, and I'm just so grateful to hear you say that, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, well, this must be a totally different world than what I just stepped out of. And it's like, it can't be that different if we're all dealing with some kind of consciousness, streaming consciousness. I mean, it's the same consciousness. We're just looking for different details and different cues and working with it differently, perhaps. And you know what I'm saying? And so when I first got into the group, I was like, everyone acts like this is just about a pen and a paper and it just never happens. And it's like, really? I just can't believe it. So I'm so grateful to hear that. I did have one other question, if I could get it in.
Yeah, go for it.
And that was, oh, Fiddle, let me try to remember what it was now. Oh, I know what it was. So do all of you meditate, or did you meditate when you began? And did you have a delay in being able to, in the place, I guess it's called theta, where you reach the information? did it take a while for you to be able to bring that through and get it down on the paper? It's like I can see it and it's flashes, but by the time my hand touches that paper, it's gone. It's gone so fast. And is there a now I can hear things, but as far as like seeing details, and which is interesting because I'm an artist, but I must be a very analytical artist, because when I do this, the shapes and the colors are flashes and they come so fast that I can't seem to catch them. I mean, I can catch words and descriptions and emotions, you know, when I'm dealing with people, perhaps more easier. Is there a way to slow that down, that visual feedback, you know, the information stream? Is there a way that you guys use to slow that down a little bit?
Yeah, if you could look on the, are you a member of the Facebook communities?
Almost all of them, yes.
Because there's there's resources there. I mean, most of us here, I would say, use or a derivative of what we call a remote viewing method. Usually a 6-stage process. They've gone, and some of them gone through different changes and mutations. But essentially, the method we've used and we've trained ourselves in over a period of years is essentially a tool that does put the remote viewer in charge. And the main one that most of us use is one called CRV, which is controlled remote viewing. So it puts us as the psychic and the intuitive in control of the psychic process, allowing us to slow down the process into stages that get progressively more contact with the target. And at the same time, it allows us to filter some of the noise that comes through from the signal that comes through. So yeah, it's a process that we've essentially used, and we taught ourselves through the methods. And, you know, as I said, the main one's CRV, but then there are offshoots of it, and they're all usually free word acronyms like TRV, SRV, TDS, and there are many out there now, and most of us use one form or another of one of these methods to do that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Like Russell uses one, I use one, Carl uses one, Darby uses one, Rick uses one. I don't know if David uses one.
Yeah. Kelly, one thing I'll put out there as an admin, and this is not in any way specific to you, because I've seen your posts, I've seen your enthusiasm, I've seen your positivity. So what I'm saying is, from prior experience, what happens very, very often is people come in from any number of perceptual modalities, all of which are incredibly valid. I remember the best example I had, I was in a training group online, came to feedback time, I turned in 14 pages of a CRV session, and it was useless. Then I saw one guy with basically a 6x8 piece of paper with no particular structure or format, literally like blow my mind with their accuracy to such a degree of detail. So right there, that was a big wake-up call. CRV isn't superior, but it has its role in the spectrum of modalities. So what happens with a lot of people, they come in and they just suddenly want to change it. Oh, you're wrong, and you don't know what you're doing, and this works and that, and I've done this. And what happens for the old timers, or let's just say, I'll be more specific, the grouchy old timers, is it's just like, if there was a forum on how to, see things in a crystal ball, and I went in there and said, you don't know anything. Remote viewing is the only way, and this is what I've done. And, so there's a respectable gradient where a person, gets accustomed and just kind of remembers the room that they came in is titled remote viewing. And you're right, there's crossover. Now, someone like Deborah, excuse me, can speak more to this, because Deborah has mediumship, psychic, remote viewing all under her belt, and she can toggle between them. The same with a person I think you would really enjoy looking up is Pam Coronado, where Pam, for instance, when she gets a crime case, and she's as legitimate comes, major TV shows, Dr. Phil, these kinds of things. So she teaches, when she first gets a case and doesn't know anything, she'll do formal remote viewing sessions. Then she'll go to kind of a extended remote viewing out of body mode and kind of take a look at things from that point of view. Then she'll use her mediumship and contact maybe the deceased person that's left their body, or tune into family members. So she has an array very similar to Deborah's, where they just turn one on, use it, turn it off, use it. So although the remote viewing forums might seem narrow-minded, limited, or skeptical, they're really not. It's just that after you see, and sometimes just 5 or 6 new people a day come in and just start railing at you for what you do, you know, unfortunately, some of those people get the wrath of all the people that came before them. So your questions, your enthusiasm, your positivity, I've been reading your posts, you know, so whatever that fine line means for you, because certainly your gift, as you've used it before you ever heard of remote viewing, obviously is functioning, producing results, and is valuable, but that doesn't mean that the kind of remote viewing mentality is just going to embrace it like that. And
Well,
exactly.
Exactly. And I definitely see how they are very different. I think that's why I'm in these groups, is because the structure of it allows one to feel more in control. I think, you know, when, I mean, the lady that you just mentioned, I'd love to be able to talk with her, but in a healing situation, number one, you have to I had to basically get my ego completely out of the way. I can't be invested in the result. Therefore, the information's not going to be, and that was another question. In a healing modality, I'm not even supposed to call and check on anybody. I mean, I really have I cannot be invested in my outcome, or the minute I'm invested in my outcome, I know I'm not in the right place to receive the information that I need or to do the work I need. And I was wondering about that as well. But back to the point, just because I plan on being here for a long time, and just so you know, I think the reason why I'm here more than any other reason is because the structure, I think, will allow me to get to be able to work with something that for me is it's kind of like I have to stand out of the way and let it happen. I don't really know how to work with it very well. It's just about intention. I don't know how to control it. I don't know how to stop it and start it. I don't know how to direct it. I don't know how to even really target it except for the person I'm with. And basically, I just kind of open up, have great intentions, try to get my ego out of the way and let it happen. So as you can tell, there's a lot of stuff happening, but no control, right? Yeah. And so to me, the structure of the remote viewing was like, oh, wow, these people have got a protocol where they actually can follow procedure and get a desired end result and feedback. I think that's what's so fascinating to me, is that, okay, if I do A, B, C, and D and I practice it enough, I might actually get some feedback and feel like I'm in somewhat control of the of the information coming through. So I'm definitely excited about it, and I hope I don't offend anybody by asking a lot of questions. It's just that I am so hungry and so eager to learn this. I feel like that it's going to be amazing to be in control of something that's so powerful, obviously.
Yeah, no, your enthusiasm's palpable in your posts, and it's much appreciated because it gets some momentum or fire, going. So for you, remote viewing might be a tool in your toolkit. None of us, I don't think, believe remote viewing is the end all and be all. I've trained in different modality, Daz, pretty much everybody here, I think. But Deborah, are you there? I noticed you just made a link for Kelly. Are you there? Because you can explain this much better. You've got multiple modalities.
Yeah, I would just say, because could talk about this for hours. For someone coming in who's already been involved in healing and other modalities, it is confusing, and especially, my first class with Lynn Buchanan about 10 years was like, what we're doing, we're not being psychic here. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? But and that still doesn't make any sense. But, what I found helped was just act like I've taken so many different remote viewing classes, and I very much it. If you're interested in this stuff, personally, I think it's just worth the money to just get into a class, you know, as many as you can, and just let go of everything you've known before. And if someone says something insulting, or they say, you know, something derogatory about psychics or mediums, just deal with it and learn everything you can, because you're in a whole different social structure. And you know, that a lot of people who do remote viewing would never want to read a person, and they'd never want to heal a person. Now, that's not true of everybody, but there's a lot who would not want to do readings on people other than to extract information about a target, or, you know, for not to just help them. So yes, learn everything you can. Don't take anything personally. And you know, there's some very strong personalities around here, but including in this room right now. But the thing is, people forgive each other, you know, and it's a male approach, you know, that, and you'll see even there's a lot of males here, and that was totally shocking to me, because in other kinds of psychic classes, it's almost all women and some gay guys and a couple of straight guys. So it's, you know, it's a male dominated field, and that's changing. I mean, things have changed so much in the last couple of years that even this conversation, I don't know, would have gotten as far as it has a couple years ago. So.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much.
Deborah, in line with strong personalities and loving discussion, I am going to throw something out at you. Some of Pam is an incredible mentor to me. The two operational outfits I work for are both run by women, and some of the most important mentorship I've received have been from women. So I would just gently suggest, and look at Lori's position in teaching, look at yours. So I think it
is changing. And Lori, I put in the chat box, Lori Williams and Lynn, they teach medical applications, which is a form of influencing. And Lori uses remote viewing techniques for helping people and starting to do more and more readings on people. So there's definitely, I mean, Russell, here you work directly with people, and Coral, and so, you know, it is changing.
I just wanted to point out, I have incredibly high regard for my female mentors, and literally my two bosses, if you want to call them bosses, are both female. So the balance, and again, I haven't been around this nearly as long as you have, so I can't say what it was, but for me, I don't have any sense of discounting the female presence in this. And then going to train my girlfriend and our housemate, literally within 30 days, they were better than I was, and I'm training them. I mean, like, they just nailed these sessions. David and I have joked about this. I mean, it's mind-blowing. I'm just like, all these hours and literally stacks of paper sitting around here. And they jumped in and took off, and I'm sitting here with my mouth open looking at their incredible sessions. So I just wanted to counter that a little bit. I, for one, sincerely appreciate the female presence in this field.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't mean to, I think I've never felt anything against females. I think the difference is you just countered, you politely countered, and in a group, in classes where it's, you know, all like women healers, nobody counters. That's the thing. What you just exhibited there is there's not debates. There's not you know, it's very different. So yeah, it's more just like someone says something and then everyone else comes up with how they could agree with that person. So it's just a different approach, and I had to get used to that. now I'm used to it and I appreciate it. And obviously I don't have a problem voicing my opinion and speaking either, but it's very, very different than let's say, you know, all female groups of healers and mediums, at least.
Oh yeah, sure, I
like,
imagine it is.
Yeah.
You know, you said one thing that I want to pitch back to Kelly when you said just forget everything that you know and kind of see what is new. I remember I'd worked very, very hard for a long time to get hired with the Seattle Fire Department. And the first day of recruit school, I remember there's 20 of us lined up, freezing cold, pouring rain. And the first thing the training instructor said was, I know many of you have been volunteers. Some of you are coming from smaller departments to the big city. But if any person throughout this entire 12 weeks says, well, the way I used to throw a ladder or the way I used to roll up a hose, as soon as you say that, you will be fired on the spot and sent home without anything. And, you know, it's inevitable. Someone's going to say, well, I know you're trying to teach us this way, but we used to, and boom, that individual was gone on the spot. So in a sort of way, even though that's extreme and paramilitary thinking, there's just some value to sitting back for a while and what are these people saying, and then groove in. It really is a nice community, and it's a little bit how shall I say, energetic as well.
And the cool thing too is that you start to find that limitations you thought you had, like, you know, if you think you are better at feeling than seeing, or you think you're better at one thing than the other, that can totally change over time as you're going with different approaches and doing different targets, and also through intention. So yeah, we're with all of this, we're kind of, just like Daz was saying, his ideograms are changing with time, how he's not as structured as he used to be. It's always changing if you let yourself, and that's what this really is, such a act of discovery and unfolding if you let it be.
I just want to ask, is there anyone else that has, just through certain targets or just remote viewing itself, completely changed their paradigm as far as what reality really is and how it works? I know it has me. I mean, I know, is there anybody else who's kind of had that impression?
I think, like, for me, the first time it happened, I literally cried. And what had happened was, you know, let's see, how old was I when I picked up remote viewing? 49. So it's been 10 years, or yeah, so it's been 10 years. So I'm almost 59. So I'd spent 49 years doing everything, dieting, meditating, God knows what, trying to find something that I could stand on, and nothing came along. So I took Ed Dame's training, and then my friend, who's now our housemate, she couldn't afford to go. I couldn't afford to help her go. So I bought her Ed Dame's DVDs. She trained while I was gone to the live course. I came back and she started showing me her work, and I was like, oh, no, you weren't supposed to copy those pictures. You're supposed to open those up after you did your session. She goes, well, I did. And I'm like, well, they're identical to the feedback. And she's like, well, no, I did. I paused the video, stopped it. And so I didn't believe it. So I started tasking her. And I still feel some emotion when I talk about, but when I controlled the targets, I literally locked them up in my safe at work. And when I came home and saw her work, and I realized for the first time there was something provable, repeatable, and trainable about this, I cried. I could not adjust. It was the relief of seeing something, knowing that I had a picture locked up of a roller coaster. And then after I gave her the number and she did her session, she drew a roller coaster. it just, you know, it's not that my paradigm crumbled, it's the paradigm I hoped for the first time it was tangible. And then we started a program where we had come up with a cue, Ed Dame style, for Kitsap Sun, which is our newspaper. Next day, front page, largest photo. And for 1 week continuously, her session. And then I actually called the paper, said, when do you go to print? We did the session before they went to print, the day before. Then we go to the paper or go to the store at like 6:30 in the morning when they drop off the bundle. Every day. The ladies at the store got involved. They're like, what are you guys doing every day? And then they would look at her session and then look at the paper when it came. And, you know, I mean, so, you know, that's part of my weird allegiance to Ingo. I mean, his life changed my life in a way nobody else ever has. So I do know what you mean for sure, David.
Yeah, it's been a great journey stepping in, you know, going down the rabbit hole. I just thought it was worth mentioning. It's you know, it just really kind of enlightens you whether you want to or not about certain things. And just one of the great things about remote viewing, I guess.
David, have you been involved with other areas of esoteric groups?
Me?
Yeah.
No, no. I started. When I first learned about remote viewing, I read about Bob Monroe's work, and I started in the mode of extended really first. So I kind of went backwards, I guess, in that sense. But when things started happening and we were starting to get accurate perceptions, you know, stupidly, my first inclination was, let's look at weird stuff. Let's look at ETs. Let's look at Bigfoot. And, you know, and we were seeing those things. So I pretty much put extended to the side and then went into controlled. And I've been trying to really just stick with the structure of that and build a firm footing in controlled remote viewing. But in extended, I saw some very life-changing things for me, you know.
Have you ever done healing modalities, seeing auras, channeling, anything like that?
I have not. No, not that I'm aware of, no. I did have a session. I remember I asked you about the Bigfoot session. The reason why I asked you about that was because I ran an experiment. All three of us got that blindly, the Bigfoot session. We all got Bigfoot. We all picked up different perceptions of them. My one friend, young guy, really good at it. I mean, he was just one of those easygoing guys, you know, and he just had that talent, you know, where it just came really easy to him. And in 20 minutes, he would be at the target. And he perceived the Sasquatch actually looking at him, like right in his face, right up in his, you know, his perceptual eyes, whatever you want to call it. And he was pissed off. So he got the impression he was actually spotted by him. But I personally, the weirdest session I ever had was, I got always blindly tasked, of course, was the Barney and Benny Hill abduction case. And I saw two, what would be described as like gray type of looking aliens. Of course, it's extended, so everything's kind of shadowy. But I clearly saw two ETs looking back at me with two bodies on the ground. I saw some flashing light in the sky. I didn't know really what it was. But I definitely picked up on the vibe that they were looking right at me and kind of like, what are you doing here? You know, so, and that was, you know, back in the 50s, they're looking at me, you know, and perceiving me back in like 2019. It really messed with my head. I'm like, what is going on? So it just very changed my whole perception of what time is. I mean, I can tell you what it's not, and that's linear. That's all I know.
Totally agree. And Bigfoot is interesting.
Great stuff, guys. Thanks for sharing. I think we're going to end it there because we're 1:15, so it's 3.25 hours we've been going at this stage.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Good luck on doing this one, Daz.
But thanks for sharing, everyone. Do you guys want to carry this on? Do you want to have another one next week, or are you out of lockdown? You want to do another one next week?
Why not?
Yeah, let's
Go
do it.
for it.
Absolutely,
Do 'em
absolutely.
as long as you want to do them, Daz.
Yeah, well, we'll
Most
keep going as long as
definitely.
everyone's interested, I guess.
We're out of lockdown. We've been out. I mean, there's like people having parties in the park under the full moon. But maybe we should like do it as a monthly thing. We should keep it on forever because it's really nice.
Well, we'll definitely do one next week and see how it goes. But yeah, once we do stop this, I was thinking about this and discussing it with my partner just yesterday. You know, we would definitely keep something going. You know, maybe if it might move to a format, yeah, once every 2 weeks or once every month or something. But we'll keep it going for now. And yeah, once it fizzles out a bit, then we'll make it a little bit less regular. Anyway, thanks for everyone turning out tonight. It's great having a fantastic chat with you all about all this. It's fantastic stuff. I'll try to get the video up online as soon as I can over the weekend. But yeah, take care and have a good week ahead.
Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone.